5 p.m. The Lafourche Parish Council meeting of September 8, 2020 is hereby called to order. Ms. Carleen, can you please conduct roll call?
Yes, sir. Mr. Jones.
Here.
Mr. Adams. Here. Mr. Grow. Here. Councilman Melvin asked that I let you all know that he will not be able to attend the meeting tonight because he's having a medical procedure tomorrow. Please remember him in your prayers. So he will be absent. Mr. Wendell. Here. Mr. Perilou. Here. Mr. Otan.
Here.
Ms. Boudreau. Here. Mr. Lorraine. Mr. Chasson.
Thank you, Ms. Carleen. So everyone is in attendance except for Mr. Bo Melvin, who will be absent for this meeting. First off, I just want to thank everyone for recognizing that we're still in phase 3, wearing a mask, and as you can see, we still have the chairs distancing. If anyone is wishing to address the council tonight, I would please ask that you fill out a blue form at the door and get it to our council clerk. When you do come up to address the council, you can certainly remove your mask to address us so we can hear you clearly. With that said, if everyone would please rise for the invocation led by Mr. Daniel Lorraine, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by my fellow veteran, Mr. Corey Perilou. Hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, with that said, we'll move right into our agenda. Item A, approval of minutes. Number 1, I entertain a motion to accept the minutes of the September 1st, 2020 special session. Got a motion by Mr. Perilou, second by Ms. Boudreau. Any discussion? There being none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes with 8 yeas, 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item B, we have none tonight, Ms. Carleen. Item C, presentations and our updates. Number 2, Parish President to recognize the Lafourche Parish Government Employee of the Month and WOW employees for the month of August. Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're happy after what we thought was going to start this in February, and because of COVID, we kind of had to back it up for a few meetings. But we're happy to do the Employee of the Month and the wonderful, outstanding worker again. Our Employee for the Month, who didn't want to stay for the meeting, she's somewhat of an introvert and didn't want to be on camera, but we put her picture up behind you guys, is Ms. Gretchen False, who's our IT manager. Gretchen's been a long-time employee of the Lafourche Parish government, spanning over 3 different administrations. Multiple times a week, you can find Gretchen working past regular hours, improving our network, sometimes until 9 p.m. If you see her in the hall or going one place to another, no matter how busy she is, she will ask you if you need some help, and she will always stop and help you. She has a positive attitude towards everything, even if everything is going wrong. Gretchen goes above and beyond the call of duty in more ways than one. So congratulations to Gretchen. And our wonderful, outstanding worker, who I don't think is here tonight either, is Mr. Brandon Nelson, a bridge tender from the Galleana Field Office. And in his nomination form, the nominator recited that Brandon has been here for 2 years. He's very understanding of his job and performs it at a high level. He's always polite to workers and keeps us notified of possible equipment failure. He's very dependable and will always take care of it even when he's off. So keep up the good work, Brandon. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Congratulations to both of them, and thank you, Mr. President. Item D, executive session. I'll entertain a motion, so moved by Mr. Wendell, second by Mr. Perilou, to enter into executive session pursuant to LARS 4217A2 to discuss the following. Item 3, James B. Cantrell versus Lafourche Parish Council, ATAL, docket number C-137931. It'll be the full council president, the parish president, the district attorney, Christine Russell's here, assistant district attorney, Lisa Ogeron. Who else we have, Mr. President? Mike G. How about the administrator, parish administrator? And the parish administrator, Mr. Mitch Ogeron. Okay, with that said, do we have any discussion moving into executive session? There being none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Is anyone opposed? Motion passes with 8 yeas, 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. By Mr. Adams, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion passes with 8 yeas and 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. At this time, I have a motion on the floor by Mr. Wendell that authorizes the attorneys to move forward in the case as was discussed in executive session. And I get a second by Mr. Perilou. Any discussion? There being none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes with 8 yeas, 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Thank you. Item E, engineers and architects reports. Do we have any engineers tonight? Sure do. Just remember, state your name and address for the record. Make sure that the mic is on, and you can drop your mask if you so feel the need.
Good evening, I'm David Waits with David Waits Engineering Surveying.
It's not on.
Good evening, Jacob Waits with Dave Waits Engineering Surveying, 1107 Canal Boulevard in Thibodaux. I have 2 projects to report on tonight, the first being the Priority Road List 2019. This project is substantially complete, and our substantial completion was recorded last week. We are now in our 45-day clear lien period. I have a slideshow to go over the roads that we fixed on this project. Peak Trail Drive. All these roads, we had patching and milling and overland, so it's all very similar. West Camellia Drive. East Camellia Drive. Tina Street. Easy Drive. Belterre Drive. Twin Oaks Drive. Plantation Road. Plantation Road at St. Bernard Street. South Hidalgo Lane. And we put some speed bumps on LaRousse Lane. And that's it. Any questions?
Thank you. Anyone who has any questions? Mr. Grove.
I was just thank y'all. Found some money from another project and added it over there, and y'all did a good job. You were able to cover quite a few roads with some leftover money from another project. So thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Mr. Adams.
I have a question. The speed bumps on Lewis Road, awesome job. All the signs have to be there on each speed bump? I mean, somebody questioned me about the sign in their yard. That's why.
It's kind of a liability issue with that.
Okay. All right.
If you want to have further discussions with it, we can.
Okay, yeah. I was just trying to find out because, I mean, that's wherever their family comes over, they park their signs
Right.
away. So, that's all.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Adams. Mr. Jones.
Yes, I'd like to thank y'all for Plantation Road, Bobby Street, and Hidalgo. All look good, so appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Any further discussion? None? Thank you. Appreciate you coming out tonight.
All right, thank you. I have one more project to report on.
Go ahead.
Fairway to Percy Brown outfall ditch improvements. We've been going back and forth with Public Works as far as where we want to head with this project, and looks like we got a decision made, so pretty soon we'll be heading out into a final design. Next couple months or two, we maybe be going into out for bid.
Very good. Anyone have any questions? Mr. Bowe's not here. I'm sure he's the one that would have the questions. If not, though, thank you for coming. We appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Do we have any other engineers, architects in the audience willing to give a report? I know some came last week. So very good. Thank you. We appreciate that. Brings us to item F, public wishing to address the council, public hearings, agenda items, et cetera. Ms. Carleen.
Yes, sir. Ms. Melodia Benoit, but if you'd come to the podium, Ms. Benoit, please state your name and address for the record, and please remember you have 3 minutes.
My name is Melodia Benoit, and I am representing the community on Eclair Drive in Thibodaux. I too am an owner of a child care center, so I know safety of children. But what happened is, it's no longer on safety of children, it's safety of our residents, because going 10 miles an hour, more than a whole block. I live on a 200 block. Speed limit says 10 miles an hour when you turn on Eclair, and it don't say till 20 till you pass my house. So now we got chances of people passing us up because we're going too slow. So out of the 30 years that this building has been daycare, it was Dot's Daycare, then Just Kids Daycare. They've always had the little guy with the little flag and their sign in the little pea gravel pit that they have in front the center. There's no sign, there's no little flagman. So people that don't live down our street may not know it's a daycare anymore. So that's how they got the speed limit changed. I have a petition with 46 of our street families that signed a petition, and we would like to put our speed limit back to 20. Could do two things. Put the 10 in front their property line for the daycare, where you have to go slow because cars want to pull out without stopping. So we do have to stop. But put it on their property only when they're there of operation hours. That's what we want. If y'all can't do the 10 miles, put a speed bump. We'll gladly take a speed bump too. It will slow cars down. But it shouldn't be where we have to go 10 miles an hour down a street that's a community, and we know there's a daycare, but people that don't live down our street don't know it's a daycare because they took the sign down. So we want it to be where it's fair, safety of the children, but what's fair for our community.
Understood, Ms. Benoit. If you'd like, that petition can be submitted into the record. If you want to give a copy to Ms. Carleen, our council clerk. Does anyone want to engage? Ms. Benoit is familiar. Mr. Jones?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Eau Claire Drive is in my district, District 1. It's been over a year we've been observing that street. September the 19th, 2019. We've been monitoring that street from September 19th till present. I had the sheriff department go out. I went myself in an unmarked car, speeding down there, especially coming from the back. It's excessive speed. Tickets were wrote for 42 miles an hour, 35 miles an hour, and
But
I don't.
it's not our community. It's people that don't live down our street.
Well, matters are different. They're speeding, and I don't think 10 miles an hour to get down the street 30 seconds more. No task is that important.
Somebody want to relinquish some time? Mr. Wendell? Mr. Wendell?
No
relinquish
task is
some more
that
time.
important on Eau Claire Drive that we have to do in the rest of safety. And the kids are the #1 priority.
I agree with you. Kids are a priority. But again, it's the center's responsibility to have an adult out that door walking the kids, and they don't. So why should the community be suffering on going 10 miles an hour all the way down this street?
Ms. Melody, it's not 10 miles all the way down the street. It's the first block. Past the daycare,
Nope.
the first block.
I live
know
at
it is.
204. The sign is at 208 or 209 for 20.
No, 20. At the first block,
No, sir.
where that crossroad
When you,
that goes to the pipeline.
when you come down.
Where's the
Eclair-
Hold
crossroad
on.
goes to the pipeline?
Hold on, Ms.
That's
Melody.
the first block. You live at 204. You live right on the other side of that first block.
But
And
the speed limit says 20 after my street, my home.
from the second block, read the ordinance, from the second block, the second and the third block is 20 miles per hour.
So I have all of our neighbors just about that sign, this including Mr. Lloyd Jones.
And some of them called me,
And they all want it back at 20.
and some of them called me, and they was glad that I put it at 10 for the
Well, it
safety
ain't
of those
many of
kids.
them.
Well, I think they was misled to say the whole street was 10 miles an hour, which is not.
I never said the whole street. When you turn on Eclair, there's a 10 miles an hour with the ordinance number underneath of it. You pass my house, and it's 3 trailers down, that it says 20. So tell me how fast I could go until I get to my yard.
So the sign may be posted in the wrong
the sign-
location. No?
Chairman, the
It's
sign is not
105
posted
feet
wrong.
for the property of the daycare. It should not have a whole block. It should be in front of the daycare. The daycare. That's it. That's what we want. And I got everybody's signatures here, if y'all want a copy of it.
Mr. Jones?
Just in front of daycare, the sign, the speed limit is 10 miles an hour. And as of right now, until something changed, if the sheriff department go out there and say the speed has improved, it would stay 10 miles an hour for the first block,
It's not, why is first block?
because that's where the daycare is.
No, the daycare is at 105 feet when you cross, when you turn on Eclair, is 2 empty lots, then the daycare. That is it. The daycare should only have their property 10 miles an hour for safety of the children.
was supposed to increase the speed to 35 miles an hour going to the back.
Well, now you're being ridiculous.
Well,
We're not asking,
okay.
Hold on.
we're asking for
That's
20.
exactly what you're saying.
No, we're
You know?
asking back what we've always had it.
Which was 20. Okay, Mr. Adams, you want to make a
I just have
statement?
a quick question. So what you're saying is you want to put it from 20 at the beginning to 10 where the land starts at the
On
daycare?
their property.
Do you realize how long it takes you to stop 10 miles an hour?
Do you realize when we turn in off of Talbot, we have to go?
Okay,
and-
I understand,
literally
but you're literally talking 105 foot, 10 miles an hour slow down. Then you're not gonna slow down to 10 miles an hour within 105 foot like that.
No, you're gonna slow down. I mean, it's common sense.
But you going from 20, 100 feet,
But
10.
it's always been. For 40 years that the street's been made.
But I'm
As the
saying, that's
daycare's
still,
been there.
you coming in 20 miles an hour, you're gonna have to hurry up and slow down to 10 miles an hour. And you're saying the people that's speeding is the people coming in, that don't belong there. Well, the first thing you do when you look down the street, you look at the speed limit sign.
We've never had that problem before. They had Dodge Daycare sign and they had Just Kids Daycare sign. So when people came down our street and the little man with the little flag.
Ms. Benoit, I hate to interrupt you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
If she doesn't speak in the mic, it's not being
Oh, I'm
picked up
sorry.
here.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
stay on the
Thank
mic.
you.
She's
But-
going to record it.
The two other owners for 40 years had signs in front of their business with the little man with the flag. People knew that was a daycare. But theirs is on top, they build it on a fence. Who's gonna look that way, not looking at the road? If
Exact-
you looking straight on the road, you're gonna see the sign.
Oh, I understand, that's why you see the speed limit line to slow down.
So why we have to change our street because of a daycare coming in a year and a half from now?
Because of 20 miles an hour to 10 miles an hour, short range. That's 10 miles an hour, you have to slow down within 105 feet.
All we want is the petitions act that we get back what we have, put speed bumps to make people slow down. You can put it on each side of their
She's talking
property.
right in the mic, Miss Carleen.
I'm trying to.
I mean, she's talking right in it. I hear you saying you can't hear it, but she's talking right in it.
So all we asking is put the 10 miles an hour on their property line or put speed bumps on their property line to slow the traffic down. We'll take either one.
Have they, just a quick question, has the daycare taken any action to try to slow the traffic down right there?
Yes, they did.
They have some-
They've been having police out there and all.
Okay.
And
No,
this
it's not
been
that
observed-
often.
this been
Only when they
observed
call.
For over a year. It just didn't start last month. It's been observed for over a year. And we got the records to
But
show.
what happened to 40 years ago,
40 years ago.
30 years ago?
40
Two
years
other
ago-
owners,
40 years ago, it had dirt roads there.
gravel. Yeah,
Gravel, dirt.
and the speed limit was
And
still
Ms. Dot-
20.
Ms. Dot was there then,
Yes,
but she sold the building or she passed away.
she sold
We
it to Ms.
cannot
Beth.
control who buy the building.
But
We control
again, this is the
speed.
third owners that we never had trouble before. Maybe the trouble is that they don't have their sign in the right spot. I don't know what else to tell you, because my sign in front of my daycare is in front of my daycare with two little men with the flags. That's safety for children. If you don't have the sign there, people that's coming in and out the street are not realizing it's a daycare. So why should the residents down our street are punished for 10 miles an hour, put speed bumps? We'll gladly take them, if that's what it takes. But we could not ride 10 miles an hour all the way down the street. And I asked the officer that one day, I said, okay, so if AMLM's gotta come, they gotta do 10 too? Even when they closed? Because I could promise you this, the owners now aren't following their own speed limit that they request for when they closed. But we gotta follow them.
And Ms. Benoit.
It's not right.
Thank you, Ms. Benoit. If you can get that, submit your petition for the record, we'd appreciate it. And I'm not sure what the next steps will be, Mr. Jones. Certainly would be on your back to try to get this, if there's anything that can be done.
So,
Next
Mr.
step
Jones,
is-
are you gonna listen to what we have?
The
Because
next step is to observe it, keep
Engage the
observing.
sheriff's office.
But with the sheriff department, and all the residents is not satisfied with that petition. I'm not gonna sit here and say that.
well, they all couldn't come. We had to represent because of
Well, I'm just
COVID.
telling the telephone calls I got. If you got a problem with the daycare center, that's between you and them. But we not, as a council, gonna get in between y'all
Yeah.
We doing for the safety of the
But
families.
y'all changed it
Ms. Benoit,
behind
my
all of
recommend-
these people's backs. We didn't know about it.
My
So
recommendation-
therefore, was it done legally?
My recommendation was the sheriff's office does have an individual that does traffic studies, as
Yes.
we've been discussing. So I would encourage you to engage him, and maybe some information can come from him, and then we can take some action from that, if you follow me. And I can get you that name if you don't have it, the sheriff's office.
I would appreciate it because, again, I don't think anybody should have to do this, even on weekends when they close. This is ridiculous. A
Understood.
school sign says while school's going on.
Understood. Thank you, Ms. Benoit, we appreciate it. If you don't mind, will you get a copy to the council clerk for the minutes?
The one I text you?
Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Benoit. Who do you have next, Ms. Carleen?
Ms. Wendy Thibodeau? if
Ms.
you'd
Wendy Thibodeau.
Come to the podium. State your name and address for the record, Ms. Thibodeau.
And I want to
Please remember you have
apologize
3
again
minutes.
for last week, Wendy.
no.
Special meetings, we can only address what's on
It's fine.
the agenda.
It's perfectly fine, don't apologize. My name is Wendy Thibodeau, Lafourche Parish Assessor. Address is 403 St. Louis Street, Thibodeau, Louisiana. I put together, I was asked to come actually 2 weeks ago to explain and address reassessment. So I put the slideshow presentation together in order to explain that. Okay, where's Rochelle? Oh, okay, yeah. Forgive me, I'm not good at PowerPoint. You can do it. Okay, this right here is Constitutional Amendment 7, Section 18, subparagraph F. It addresses reappraisal. It says all property subject to taxation shall be reappraised and valued in accordance with the section at intervals not more than 4 years. It is my understanding that this was done in 1974 with the Constitutional Convention, and it was stated that all property in Louisiana has to be reappraised of not more than every 4 years. So that was voted on by the people of the state of Louisiana. In 1977, they made an amendment to the revised statute that said that on and after January 1st of 1978, all assessments of real property shall be based on a reassessment of all such real property, and such real property shall be reappraised at least every 4 years thereafter. And all assessments of personal property shall be based on reassessment every year. So since 1978, the state of Louisiana has been going through reassessment at least every 4 years. Lafourche is part of Louisiana. Reassessment has been in place for every 4 years. The assessor does not create value. People create value by their transactions in the marketplace, meaning I don't sit there and just guess this stuff. I don't throw a dart. What happens is I take all of the sales in Lafourche Parish and come up with market value. People create market value. When they buy and sell property, they are creating the market. All I do is collect the data and apply it according to the Louisiana Tax Commission. How does reappraisal work? This is for real property, okay? Personal property is totally different because it's every year and it's on a different approach. This is what I'm stating for right now is for real property only. What I do is all of the property in the parish is assigned to a neighborhood or an area by like, kind, and similar properties. So I go throughout the parish and we put all of the similar properties together. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's in a subdivision. That's why I said it's in a neighborhood or an area. If it's like, kind, and similar in a relatively short area, it is put into a group, a neighborhood. Then from that point, all of the sales in that neighborhood or area, and I put for the last 4 years, which was 2016, 17, 18, and 19, the last 4 years of sales for that area is pulled out from a report, which I have a copy of that. All of the sales are pulled out in a report. It's broken down, okay? So all of the sales are reviewed to make sure that we have them. The outliers are identified. This is for any sales that were done through, transactions done through donations, warranty deeds, successions, or anything like that. Those sales are not arm's length transactions, meaning they are not open market sales. So the law tells me that I have to remove those. So those abnormalities are removed from this report. Then, also in the sales report, I pull out lots at that point, okay? Right before this step, I pull out all of the lots. And those are the same thing. In an area, what is the average set lot sale price? And then that is applied across the neighborhood or area. This step is the average is established. An average dollar per square foot is determined for each neighborhood or area, and that amount is applied to the living area square footage only of each property. And that's exactly what this is. I took a neighborhood, I just pulled it, and what I do is pull all of the sales, and then the land value is deducted, and it comes up with an improvement and $1 per square foot. And that $1 per square foot is applied across the board. This is called mass appraisal approach. That is what the tax commission requires me to do in order to do reappraisal, reassessment. It is not the same thing as when you go and hire an appraiser and the appraiser comes in and says, you have granite countertops, you have crown molding, you have they are specifically appraising your house only. What I am doing is mass appraisal. I take an average dollar per square foot and apply it across the board. It's bricks and mortar, not the details on the inside. That way, that's where market value is determined in my office. If you have a question about how much I have your property valued at, ask yourself, the first step is, how much would my property appraise for? How much would my property sell for? How much do I have my property insured for? Those are the things that you have to ask in order to come up with market value and just to kind of keep checks and balances. Look, it's not a perfect system, but is what the law requires me to do.
You can continue, Wendy, but I'll advise you only got a couple more minutes, and then
That's fine.
we're going to be going to public hearing at 6 p.m.
No, it's fine. I have no discretion in this method. I have no discretion on the timing of it. It is in the law, plain and simple. I had no choice but to do my job in reassessment. I had to do it. If there was any way possible that I could veer away from not doing reassessment in 2020, believe you me, I would have done it. It's just that I have to be uniform, fair, and equitable. That I'm following the law. Any question?
Anyone have any questions for Wendy? I do. Go ahead, Mike.
But people can go to you, when you talked about like, it's a mass appraisal. If I got my paperwork and it showed that my house is valued at 100,000, but I just got it appraised, something about selling it appraised for 70 or 60, I could bring that to you and ask for
A reduction. And
as
the
well
reason,
as if I'm over 65 on military.
well, that's different.
Okay.
Hold up, one thing at a time. The reason why I can do that is because the guidelines that the tax commission sets for all of the assessors across the state to use is mass appraisal approach. When you come in with an appraisal, and a fee simple appraisal, it allows me to remove you from the mass appraisal process and apply the fee simple. They allow me to do that. As long as it's by a certified appraiser within the last 6 months. I mean, it has to be on the up and up. But yes, as far as that goes. Now, what you're talking about with the 65 and the veterans and the disability, those are freezes. You have to qualify for those freezes. There's different requirements, and you can go on my website, you can call my office, go into one of the 3 offices and ask them for what qualifies you, and we'll be more than happy to apply that freeze. If you made 65, if you turned 65 during 2020 or before, we will roll your assessment back to what it was last year.
If somebody.
Mike, you're going to have to wrap it up. I got to go to public hearing.
All right.
Quick. I would encourage you to follow up with
I just want to
her.
make sure she answers. So if somebody doesn't have an appraisal on their house and a whole new neighborhood went up next door and all those houses selling for 150 and they all 1,500 square feet, let's say, and you have the exact same size house, but it's 35 years old and you don't believe yours is worth that, you would have to get it professionally appraised and bring that paperwork to you.
Not necessarily. If they can prove to me that they don't belong in that neighborhood or area, we're more than happy to take it out of that. But I advise everybody, and please call my office. That is what we get paid to do, is to answer these questions. If you have an issue with your assessment, your reappraisal letter, call my office. I have 20 people that would be more than happy to help you with this.
Very good. Thank you, Wendy. We appreciate it. Okay, with that said, we're going to have to move on to item G. We will return to public hearing. We'll do an amendment to the agenda deviation. So item G, 2020 millages, public hearing and public meeting at 6 p.m. I'll entertain a motion to open public hearing. So moved by Mr. Wendell, second by Mr. Adams, that we open public hearing and public meeting for the 2020 millages. Any discussion? There be none. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes with 8 yeas, 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 4, discussion to levy not rolling forward 2020 millage rates for the following: Special Service District Number 1, Drainage, Health, and Library; Road District Number 1, Recreational Facilities; Public Buildings; Library 014, Library 017, Health Unit; Drainage District Parish-wide, Criminal Tax, Council on Aging, General Alimony, Fire Protection District Number 9, Veterans Memorial District Ward 10, Recreation District Number 2, Fire Protection District Number 1, Fire Protection District Number 7, and Fire Protection District Number 4. I'll now entertain a motion to close public hearing, public meetings for 2020. So moved by Mr. Adams, second by Mr. Jones. Any discussion? There be none. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes with 8 yeas and 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Okay, so on each one of these, it'll be I will take a voice roll call. Item H, public hearing and public meeting and ordinances for ratification. A voice roll call vote must be taken on each ordinance, and on the final side, copy of each ordinance, each council member's name will be noted as to which way they voted, next to yeas, nays, abstain, and or absent. So here we go. I got a motion by Mr. Perilou, second by Mr. Wendell, to open the public hearing and the public meeting. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes with 8 yeas, 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 5, ordinance levying and imposing taxes for 2020 on all the property subject to taxation in the Parish of Lafourche, Special Service District Number 1. This is Mr. Adams for the administration. You gotta get a second? Second by Mr. Jones. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I am allowing the public to comment on these, right? So with that said, would anyone from the public like to comment on item 5? 1 time? 2 times? 3 times? Anyone from the council? No one from the council. We'll move this to a vote, and we'll do a roll call. I'll do the roll call, Ms. Corleen, if you're fine with that. And I'll start with Mr. Jones.
Yay.
Mr. Adams. Aye. Mr. Grow. Yay. Myself, yay. Mr. Wendell. Yay. Mr. Perilou. Ms. Boudreau. Yay. Mr. Lorraine.
Yay.
That said, the motion passes with 8 yeas and 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. You good with that, Ms. Corleen? Okay, very good. Item 6, ordinance levying and imposing taxes for 2020 on all the property subject to taxation in the Parish of Lafourche, Drainage, Health, and Library. Moved by Mr. Adams for the administration. Can I get a second? Second by Mr. Jones. Would anyone from the public like to comment on this ordinance? 1 time? 2 times? 3 times? Anyone from the council? Mr. Lorraine.
Yes, on this one, it's a percentage for library, drainage, and health unit. There was always discussion about actually cutting this library and putting it in drainage. So my question to the parish president would be, if this was done, because I see further down the road on item 11, you're looking at cutting the library from 4.20 to 2.20. And that's parish-wide, I believe. So if we was to cut that section, would it be the same amount of cutting item 11? I'm just asking a question.
Can you answer that, Mr. President? He's asking, 6 is a relationship to item 11.
Yeah, so, a mill parish-wide, and Madam Assessor, correct me if I'm wrong, it's a little over $1 million, right?
No, it's less than that now. Hold up, give me 1 second. It's, probably about 870.
Yeah, so when, yeah. way
So
back-
just state that number, Mr. President, that way we got it for the record.
870,000 for 1 mill parish-wide, right? So it's, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
It's okay. I
Ms.
just
Thibodeau.
gotta find-
So, yeah, we have had some discussions about, you know, years back, it's always been a discussion about what you can consolidate. I don't know that we can bring the amendment from the floor we talked about. There was some discussions about whether or not, because it's a special district, can we cut it without them being here and being notified, because it was kind of a last minute addition? But I think that goes back to the whole tax reform committee that's being established, right, with Dr. Richardson, is really looking at that checkbook and see what we're collecting and what we're spending, and whether it's drainage or the libraries or the veterans or, you know, what we collect here parish-wide, everything you're about to go through, the fire districts, what can we adjust, reallocate, get rid of? So I think that's a discussion that hopefully we can send to the voters at some point next year.
This year, and this is according to my taxable value that I have so far, and I'm certified, it's 939,902.
If she's gonna keep making comments, I would need her to come to the mic.
Yeah, it's $939,902 for a mill parish-wide. That helps you out.
About a meal.
So whether you got rid of this 1.97 or the 2.2, 6 and 1/2 a dozen of the other, rounds about to the same amount.
Because there's always been some talk about the one that's with drainage and health unit, but nothing was really ever done. And
On that allocation, what are we still talking about from Wendy? What do we need from Wendy? Roughly a meal is $1 million.
You just want to know what the parish-wide mills is.
I can
Go
tell you
ahead,
what
Wendy.
that specific district, what it's projected to get this year. That drainage, health, and library, this is total, I don't have the percentage breakdown. With the millage rate, if the increase, the millages that y'all are levying tonight, it would be 5.207064.
Are we talking about the ordinance that's up right now?
Yes.
Or this is not item 11?
No,
This is the ordinance that you're talking about right now. The
Okay.
money that it's gonna be generated if this
Okay.
levy passes.
I just wanna make sure we
I mean,
stay
if this
focused
millage-
on item 6, not 11.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
right.
I can give y'all the numbers for all of these that y'all are asking for
You
if y'all
have-
want. It's up to y'all.
I don't need them.
You have Munis up that shows what they have in the actual account right now?
No. That's the legislative auditor.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure, you guys, that we stay on point on number 6. We're discussing number 6.
But if, Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
it goes to Mike's, if you guys noticed the email we sent out last Friday with the actual copies of the budget, that I think, and again, I'm gonna look at Renita, but their audited number projected audited number for 2019, or 2020, excuse me, it'd be about $12 million in the bank.
The report that Wendy gave us a few weeks ago, the 2019 numbers is very educational. If you look at that in depth, that gives you everything you need to see and know. Any follow-ups, Mr. Lorraine?
No, I just wanted to make a comparison where I thought, it'd have been a lot easier just go get that instead of messing with the other one, but it's up to y'all.
Understood. Yeah, if I follow what you're saying is, because this is grouped together, how can we can spend it, differently or adjust? Okay. Any further discussions? Any more questions for Ms. Wendy?
I have the
Thank you.
numbers for all of these. If y'all want them, just let me know.
Okay, very good. Thank
Okay.
you. Appreciate it. Okay, if there's no further discussion on item 6, we're going to move that to a roll call vote. This time I'll start on the opposite side. Mr. Lorraine?
Yes, because we have drainage in there. I don't have a choice right now.
Ms. Boudreau? Mr. Perilou? Mr. Wendell? Myself, Orman, yea. Mr. Grow? Mr. Adams? Mr. Jones? Motion passes with 8 yeas, 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 7, ordinance levying and imposing taxes for 2020 on all the property subject to taxation in the Parish of Lafourche Road District Number 1. Mr. Adams for the administration, a second by Mr. Jones. Any discussion from the public? One time. Any comment from the public 2 times? Any comment from the public 3 times? Anyone from the council? There being none, we'll move it to a roll call vote. Mr. Jones? Mr. Adams? Mr. Grove? Myself, Otan, yea. Mr. Wendell? Mr. Perilou? Ms. Boudreau? Mr. Lorraine? Motion passes with 8 yeas, 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 8, ordinance levying and imposing taxes for 2020 on all the property subject to taxation in the Parish of Lafourche recreational facilities. Moved by Mr. Adams for the administration, second by Mr. Jones. Would anyone from the public like to comment? 1 time? 2 times? 3 times? Anyone from the council? There being none, we'll move it to a vote. Mr. Jones?
Yay.
Mr. Adams? Mr. Grove? Mr. Otan, yea. Mr. Wendell? Mr. Perilou? Ms. Boudreau? And Mr. Lorraine?
Yes.
Motion passes with 7 yeas, 1 abstention, that being Ms. Boudreau, and 1 absence, that being Mr. Melvin. Got it, Ms. Carleen? Okay, item 9, ordinance levying and imposing taxes for 2020 on all the property subject to taxation in the Parish of Lafourche public buildings. Moved by Mr. Adams for the administration, second by Mr. Jones. Would anyone from the public like to comment? 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, anyone from the council? There being none, we'll move it to a vote. Mr. Lorraine?
Yes.
Ms. Boudreau? Mr. Perilou? Mr. Wendell? Otan, yea. Mr. Grove? Mr. Adams? Mr. Jones?
Yay.
Motion passes with 8 yeas, 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 10, ordinance levying and imposing taxes for 2020 on all the properties subject to taxation in the Parish of Lafourche Library. 014, Mr. Adams for the administration, a second by Mr. Jones. Anyone from the public would like to comment on item 10? 1 time? 2 times? Anyone from the public? 3 times? Anyone from the council? There being none, we'll move it to, Mr. Wendell, go ahead. You have the floor.
Wendy, do you have a total on that one?
Yes.
Item 10.
Item 10, library, 14?
Which millage is that? I don't have them I don't have them. Is that the 1.71? This is at 1.71, that paper that I sent to everybody, whatever, a month ago. This is according to that adjusted number. It would generate 1.607234.69. So $1,607,234.69.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Wendy. Appreciate it. Any further discussion by the council? There being none, we'll move it to a roll call vote. Mr. Jones? Yay. Mr. Adams? Yay. Mr. Grove? Yay. Mr. Otan, yea. Mr. Wendell? Yay. Mr. Perilou? Yay. Ms. Boudreau? Yay. Mr. Lorraine?
Yes.
Motion passes with 7 yeas, 1 nay, that nay being Mr. Grove, and 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 11, ordinance levying and imposing taxes for 2020 on all the property subject to taxation in the Parish of Lafourche Library 017. Moved by Mr. Adams for the administration, and a second by Mr. Jones. And on this one, I will mention you all were given an amendment from the floor to item 11, which basically was to roll their millage back from 4.2 to 2.2. However, we have decided, Mr. Wendell, correct me if I'm wrong, but we've decided to pull that amendment from the floor due to some possible legal ramifications. But there was a desire at one point to roll them back from 4.2 to 2.2. Anyone from the public would like to comment? I just want to mention that since y'all all have the amendment in front of y'all. Anyone from the public would like to comment on item 11? 1 time? Yes, sir. Please state your name and your address for the record.
Price Bourgeois, 333 Camellia Drive, Thibodaux, Louisiana. So the previous one was about 1.1.
Is the mic on? Y'all can hear it? Yep, it's good.
Okay.
We're good, thank you.
All right, so the previous one was about 1.5 million, am I correct in that? And this one's probably about 2.5 million, so that's about 3.7 million, something like that. I don't know how many other millages there are, but what's the budget of the library?
I don't know if, Mr. President, you have the floor.
So luckily they just sent me this.
just these two?
So in their audited financials in 2019, their total, what I'll call cash on hand, was $16,193,000. Their projected revenue for 2020, so the little millage that was in conjunction with the one Daniel talked about, the 1.7, and then this 4.20 will garner them, let's say 6.4 million. I'm not gonna go to the exact penny. Their projected expenses for 2020, their budget that they submitted to us was 8.7 million. So that would give them a total fund balance at the end of 2020 of 12.1 million.
Thank you, Mr. President.
First, I'm sorry, what was the budget, though, the spending? It's 3.7 million?
8.7.
8.7. Okay, thank you.
You're quite welcome. Thank you, Mr. Bourgeois, for addressing the council. Would anyone else from the public like to comment? Go one more time, 2 times. Anyone from the public? 3 times. Anyone from the council would like to make a comment at this time? Mr. Wendell, you have the floor.
Wendy, I'm sorry last time.
No, don't apologize, it's fine. I have it, I have these numbers. Okay, the 4.2 mils, that's the, yeah, am I on the right line? Yeah, 4.2. That would generate $3,947,593.98. I just want to let y'all know, the reason why these numbers are slightly increased from the paper that I sent y'all 2 months ago is because this includes all of the new construction added on to the roll after reassessment. Like, I have to reassess and then add new stuff. It's slightly higher. It's not a whole lot higher, but it's slightly higher because of the increased millage rate plus the new added property onto the roll.
Thank you.
All right.
And just for clarity, Ms. Wendy, so this, imposing this millage, this is a millage that was voted on by the people of Lafourche Parish, correct?
Kind of. This year is very unique because we lost $60 million in watercraft and taxable value. So what happens is, I don't know how many of y'all remember the faucet. Well, what happens is when the taxable, and this is all set by the legislative auditor and in the law, when the taxable value in a parish decreases in a reassessment year, in order for, the law states that taxing districts have to generate to receive the same amount of money from 2019 to 2020. So when there's a decrease in the taxable value, the only way to do that is to increase the rate. So that's why the legislative auditor increased these rates up. Anybody that receives money, property tax money from watercraft, their millages increased automatically. Now, you don't have to go through the roll forward process because the legislative auditor did that. It's in the law. You don't have to go through the procedure, but it is an increase in rate. It is.
And just once again, I just wanted to make that statement that this was a millage though voted on by the people of Lafourche
The
Parish
original
and
millage
parish.
was voted on by the people.
And then secondarily, if someone is homestead exempt, if their property is below the threshold, $75,000, they still can vote. They don't pay into this millage perhaps, but they can still vote for this tax. Is that correct?
Correct. And just
Okay.
because the legislative auditor levied this amount of money, that's just to say, that's just for your district, this district, to receive the same amount of money from one year to the next. For instance, I'm a parish-wide millage. My millage rate went from 2.5 to 2.59. I am not levying, there is nothing in the law that says you have to levy that 2.59. You can levy whatever you want. 2 years ago, the center didn't levy any millage. They levied 0. So my point is that you can levy what you see fit.
So by
Mr.
us
Wendell.
not moving forward, as we did on the last thing just now, does that override where we're at, the legislate, or whoever with the state rolled it forward or raised it?
They raised it only to generate the same amount of money from last year to this year. That's the only reason why the rate was increased, because we lost $60 million from watercraft, and the only way to make it up is to increase the rate.
But that does not have to be collected.
That doesn't have to be levied. You don't have to levy that amount. You can levy whatever amount you want, and that's in any year. That's not just a reassessment year. You can levy whatever amount of millage you want. I'm saying you, but a district
Yes.
can levy whatever
district.
millage they see fit to run their district.
Right.
So that's why you have some leeway in this. Now, the numbers I'm giving you are the numbers from the legislative auditor with the additional
reflection
property
of
added
them,
on.
okay.
So that 3.9 million is pretty much the maximum,
Thank you.
okay?
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Wendell. Anyone else have any questions? Mr. Adams?
Okay, so, you said their budget was $8 million. And you said they're only gonna make 6 million this year on these taxes, right?
Well, these are
Technically,
only 2 millages, there's an additional millage. I don't know the percentage that the parish
Okay.
breaks that drainage, health, and
Yeah.
library. I don't know what percentage the library gets of that.
All I'm saying is at some point in time, they're gonna run out of money. Is there any way we can get them here to discuss their budget? Or is there any way we can get an auditor to look at their budget? Cause honestly, if I start spending more than I make, I'm broke.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. You have, someone wants to answer that?
So, I mean, I guess, yeah.
Okay, Mr. President, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, I mean, their budget or their books are audited every year, just like ours are, right? They're encompassed in the big audit. You can call them as a council, they serve at the pleasure of you guys, right? So you can call them before you to talk about their budget anytime you want to, as far as as far as I would imagine. And then when we actually have the budget hearings, we'll get the budget to you guys by the 1st of October. When we have those budget hearings in November, that would be your time to really question it, though.
So while we're speaking still on item 11 and the taxes in their budget, Mr. President, can you comment, does that $16 million budget that they have, does that impact Lafourche Parish government in any other kind of way in terms of grants or anything like that? Nope. Okay. Anyone, we still got Mr. Grove.
I was just gonna mention, everybody that has a mill or several mills, they survive on this money. I mean, there's no arguing that. I mean, they need this money coming in. And if they have a high balance, I think it's safe to say that someone has talked to them, whether somebody in your office or a parish president's office or this tax reform committee, has talked to them about having a heavy budget when other people are struggling. So I just wanted to put that out there. It's not a jack on the library or anything. There's a bunch that need that, and I hate to use the word greed, there's a bunch that have a little bit more than they need when a lot of other areas are suffering.
Well,
That's my point.
For instance, the 2.59 that the legislative auditor said I can levy that. I am taking my surplus, some of my surplus, which I had saved, in my savings, I'm cashing in a CD, and plus I'm making cuts to my office, and I'm only levying 1.87. So I'm making cuts, plus I'm using my surplus to balance my budget in order not to overtax the taxpayer.
So you're trimming your own
Mr.
fat
Wendell?
and
Right.
taking
Yes, sir,
care
I
of.
am.
Okay, that's.
Because I can't get up here and ask you to lower your millage
I think
if I'm not
that's
the
point
example.
of this whole,
Of item
where
11.
this all got started.
But
Okay.
and
Mr. Grove?
Daniel can add, I'm sure he's probably what he's gonna talk about. There's been instances like with solid waste years ago where they rolled things back and came up short. So it's not something you wanna just hastily just knee jerk at, you gotta think these things through, but, some of these millages are very, very, padded over the years.
Thank you, Mr. Grove. Mr. Lorraine?
But the only ones you can actually fool with are the parish-wide ones. Now, my question is, if we're not cutting this mill tonight, are we able to cut it before the end of the year? If we don't cut it, it goes in, because look, y'all got an email the other day. These people are spending money. It's got to come to a stop.
Crazy money.
Yeah.
They're spending money, and they got an 8% raise coming. I don't think, I've been here 37 years, and we never gave a parish employee 8% raise. It's time somebody wakes up. Just because they got the money don't mean you have to spend it. I can tell you one thing, that tax is coming up in 2 years. They're gonna have a tough time passing it.
And it's not, you don't have to do it. The thing about millages is that you have that option every year to change it. So even though I'm not levying the 2.59 in my office, the 2.5 is still there, it's still there.
So next year
until I
you
do
could
another
cash in on
reassessment. And one thing I
Hold on.
want you all to understand is, one thing I'm working on with Senator Smith is you have to roll up to that maximum millage before the next reassessment. I am working on legislation, we were working on it this year, but because of COVID, he can only do 5 bills. In order to not mandate a district to have to levy that maximum millage rate before reassessment. If the people vote on it, they would vote on it, and if you didn't need to levy the maximum, it would be out there in a savings account to where if you needed it, like with solid waste, say they had this millage and they were doing really well, and they didn't overtax the people, but that millage, they wouldn't lose that rate. So then 10 years or 5 years later, if they did need to levy that maximum for 1 year or 2 years, they could go out there and use it. They weren't being penalized for not overtaxing the people. So that is working. I had to, he could only do 5 bills
Right.
in mine, you know. So that is, I am working on that to kind of help this process.
And that's what many of the taxing districts often are trying to figure out if it's that year that they have to pull the
Correct.
full rate because of this state law.
Yes.
So hopefully the state law will go away and you won't be obligated. Mr. Winter, you have I'm sorry, Mr. Lorraine, you still had the floor.
No, I just I was thinking that if we were gonna do some cutting, but now it looks like it's just gonna continue. I mean, you know,
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Lorraine. Mr. Wendell?
I have a question, and I don't know who it needs to go to. My understanding is we're not adjusting the rate because of some legal issues that we may not have the authority to do that because of advertising or public wishing to comment or the actual taxing district. But we can control or can vote on the budget later on in the year of what that taxing district has access to. And any gap between the budget that we vote on and the millage that is collected goes into that savings account, correct?
If they choose to, but yes, if you or oversee their budget, then yes, what you're saying.
So even though the taxpayers are burdened with the full millage this go-round, we can adjust it for next year, and the excess that we collect from approved budget to millage collected would go into a fund that they have access to for other things down the road, but we'd have some time to legally work on this to get it adjusted.
That's right. And so one of the things you have to remember, Mr. Wendell, is that the taxpayers voted for this millage.
Right.
So, and that taxing district is saying they're collecting it, so what is the legal ramifications of us overruling what the taxpayers have decided on what they wanted millage rate wise?
Right.
But
If you follow me.
you're not overruling what the taxpayer said, meaning that.
Potentially you are.
There's nothing, yeah, but like the taxpayers voted to have 4.9 mills, I think it was, to the center. The center's board of directors lived on their surplus for a whole year and chose not to levy that millage. It wasn't overriding what the taxpayer said because it's not going away. You're not losing it. It's
Right.
still there. The next year they went and they levied 2 mills or whatever they needed. But what it is after I went through in 2015, that was one of the districts that chose to live off of their surplus, that they had that much surplus, that they didn't they didn't burden the taxpayers with it, and they lived off of their surplus.
My biggest issue with the whole thing and why I originated this and pushed so hard to get the answers and the research that I did was because I'm not trying to override the taxpayers, but the taxpayers put their faith in me to be a good steward of their money. And from the dollars and cents and figures that I've seen and some of the stuff that the money's being spent on and how it's being spent raises a flag, and I'm almost ashamed to vote to continue with this because of what's going on with the money.
And-
So
I'm sorry.
anytime you say, oh, yes, it's for the kids, or it's for the library, or it's for the school, people are gonna come out and they're gonna say, yeah, we want the best for our kids. But if you really get to the nuts and bolts of it, look at the dollars and the cents and the figures, and what exactly that money's being spent on, my God, I do not want to vote yes for this, but to avoid shutting down a portion of the government, it has to go on. But at least we've identified a way to correct it or kind of make up for it, even though it's 2 months away. There's still some room for justice in there because there's got to be some reform with that millage, with that area, because this is out of control.
Very good, Mr. Wendell. Mr. Lorraine, you want the floor again? Go ahead.
So we could go ahead and do this, but then you could tackle it when their budget comes to the council.
That's my understanding.
Okay, because I can tell you, the people voted for it. But I think it's up in 2 years, and right now, they ain't got a snowball chance in it.
Yeah,
And
and from
if
our
that-
perspective, and what really brings it to light is I think when you make this publication and we look at what we collect for library, which was what we own, and you compare that to drainage and how we collect more for some of these essential services, it becomes somewhat of an issue.
And I'm just saying, businesses, with the oil and gas industry, if there is any way, and I'm not just speaking to this council for the districts that I'm speaking to all of the taxing districts. If there is any way, shape, form that you can cut, this year is the year to cut, and more so next year. Because next year, we're not gonna have the reassessment to adjust those rates. And I'm telling you, these numbers are not reflective of COVID or when the oil and gas industry bottomed out. We will not see that in ad valorem until next year. And we're not gonna have reassessment to make up that difference in the taxing districts. So what I'm saying is that if you can use your surplus or any way you can save to not overtax the people, I am begging you as the assessor to do it. Because, I mean, there's a lot of people, you know, that are definitely hurting out there. And businesses, and they're the ones who pick up the tab. The businesses pick up the tab. And we lost 60 million with watercraft. That's why I keep on saying watercraft is so important, because if it goes away, our millage rates, I calculated this out, our millage rates will go up to 300 mills in Lafourche Parish. I can't, for instance, we lost, let me see, I have numbers that we lost. Like, we lost 5 drilling rigs this year. We lost $10 million in aircraft, that's helicopters that support the oil and gas industry. That's not Bristow, what they just did. This is 2019. We lost 10 million taxable assessed value in that. We lost 5.4 million in drilling rigs. We went from 10 drilling rigs to 5. We lost 6.5 just in miscellaneous machinery and equipment. That's just businesses that have machinery and equipment. And we lost $60 million in watercraft for a total, and that's just big ones. That's not everything, okay? Now, with reassessment, we made up those that I just called out minus watercraft. There is no way we can overcome watercraft with real estate. There's no way.
Very good. Any last
One
items?
final
Mr.
thing,
Wyndham?
I'm just glad you publicly said, just because you're allowed to do it, don't stick it to the taxpayer or the business, and you're adjusting within
You
your,
weren't here in 2015, but I went around to all of the taxing districts with a faucet to explain reassessment and how not to overtax. If you would like a copy of one of those,
please
I'm going to
send it
get
to me or get
Rochelle,
it
my
to me. That-
assistant, and to send it to you. It's just an illustration on how reassessment works.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks for all the answers and
No problem,
information. too.
anytime. Anybody else?
No, thank you, Wendy. We appreciate it. Okay, no further discussion. We'll move it to a vote. Be roll call. Mr. Lorraine? Ms. Boudreau? Mr. Perilou? Mr. Wendell?
Yes.
Mr. Otan, yea. Mr. Grow? Mr. Adams? Mr. Jones?
Yay.
Motion passes with 7 yeas, 1 nay, that nay being Mr. Grow, and 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 12, ordinance levying and imposing taxes for 2020 on all the property subject to taxation in the Parish of Lafourche Health Unit. Mr. Adams for the administration, second by Mr. Jones. Would anyone from the public like to comment on item 12? 1 time? 2 times? Item 12, 3 times? Anyone from the council? Mr. Jones?
No, yay.
Oh, yeah, you might go, I'm sorry. Okay, roll call vote. Mr. Jones?
Yay.
Mr. Adams? Mr. Grow? Mr. Otan, yea. Mr. Wendell? Mr. Perilou? Ms. Boudreau? Mr. Lorraine?
Yes.
Motion passes with 8 yeas, 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 13, ordinance levying and imposing taxes for 2020 on all the properties subject to taxation in the Parish of Lafourche Drainage District, parish-wide. Mr. Adams for the administration, second by Mr. Jones. Would anyone from the public like to comment on item 13? 1 time? 2 times? Anyone from the public 3 times? Anyone from the council? There being none, we'll move it to a vote. Mr. Lorraine? Yes. Ms. Boudreau? Yes. Ms. Perilou? Yes. Mr. Wendell?
Yes.
Otan, yea. Mr. Grow? Mr. Adams? Mr. Jones?
Yay.
Motion passes with 8 yeas and 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 14, ordinance levying and imposing taxes for 2020 on all the property subject to taxation in the Parish of Lafourche criminal tax. Ms. Adams for the administration, second by Mr. Jones. Would anyone from the public like to comment? Item 14, 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, anyone from the council? There being none, we'll move it to a roll call vote. Mr. Jones?
Yay.
Mr. Adams? Mr. Grow? Otan, yea. Mr. Wendell? Mr. Perilou? Ms. Boudreau? Mr. Lorraine?
Yes.
Motion passes with 8 yeas, 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 15, ordinance levying and imposing taxes for 2020 on all the property subject to taxation in the Parish of Lafourche Council on Aging. Moved by Mr. Adams for the administration, second by Mr. Jones. Would anyone from the public like to comment on this? 1 time, 2 times, anyone from the public 3 times, anyone from the council? Mr. Lorraine, your light's on. You want to, nope, okay. You can put it back on because we're going to do a roll call. Mr. Lorraine?
Yes.
Ms. Boudreau? Yes. Mr. Perilou? Mr. Wendell? Yay. O10, yay. Mr. Grove? Yay. Mr. Adams? Yay. Mr. Jones?
Yay.
Motion passes with 8 yeas, 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 16, ordinance levying and imposing taxes for 2020 on all the property subject to taxation in the Parish of Lafourche, general alimony. Moved by Mr. Adams for the administration, second by Mr. Jones. Would anyone from the public like to comment on this? Please note for the record, at 18:37, Mr. Wendell stepped out the room, Ms. Carleen. So I'll start back over. Anyone from the public like to comment on item 16 1 time? Anyone from the public 2 times? Anyone from the public 3 times? Anyone from the council? There being none, we'll move to a roll call vote. Mr. Jones?
Yay.
Mr. Adams? Yay. Mr. Grove? Yay. Vote 10, yay. Mr. Wendell has stepped out of the room. Mr. Perilou? Yay. Ms. Boudreau? Mr. Lorraine?
Yeah.
Motion passes with 7 yeas, 1 person stepping out of the room being Mr. Wendell, and 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Clear enough for you, Ms. Carleen? Item 17, ordinance levying and imposing taxes for 2020 on all the property subject to taxation in the Parish of Lafourche, Fire Protection District Number 9. Mr. Perilou for the administration. Get a second by Mr. Jones. Anyone from the public like to comment on this? 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. Anyone from the council? I'll let the record reflect Mr. Wendell has walked back in the room at 18:40. There being none, we'll move this to a roll call vote. Mr. Lorraine?
Yes.
Ms. Boudreau? Yay. Mr. Perilou? Yay. Mr. Wendell? Yay. Mr. O10, yay. Mr. Grove? Yay. Mr. Adams? Yay. Mr. Jones?
Yay.
Motion passes with 8 yeas, 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 18, ordinance levying and imposing taxes for 2020 on all the property subject to taxation in the Parish of Lafourche, Veterans Memorial District, Ward 10. Mr. Lorraine for the administration. Can I get a second? Second by Mr. Grove. Anyone from the public like to comment? 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. Anyone from the council? Mr. Grove.
Does anybody have a balance on this one? This is another one too. I mean, this is a tough one to talk about too, because like the library, hard pressed to find anybody that doesn't like veterans. And I might say this facility is one of the better ones I've ever seen, not just in the state, anywhere else. It's beautiful. But how much money do they have?
They are projected to receive $558,085.23.
What's their balance?
I don't have, do you have the,
Anybody know the
Archie?
Their budget doesn't flow through us like the library,
Okay.
so I don't know what their
Okay.
fund balance is.
All right.
Daniel might, he goes to their meetings
Daniel,
all
do
the
you know?
time.
What's their balance?
Wait, what's that?
What's their balance? Like, what do they have in surplus?
Balance, they probably have right now for the end of the year about 700,000.
Okay. And
But don't
they
forget-
meet too, you know.
Don't forget, that's a district tax. The whole parish don't pay
Yeah,
this.
that's not a
Sure,
parish-wide, that's only the 10th
No,
ward.
this is only on the businesses in that area that pay that one heavy.
10th ward, but they did roll forward because they receive watercraft money.
Right. And they're very active. They meet, they're strong, the one in Heroes that, you know, it's kind of, we share, they have trouble meeting and getting a group together. So, okay, I was just wondering.
Thank you, Mr. Grove. Anyone else on the council like to discuss item 18? If not, we'll move it to a vote. Mr. Jones?
Yay.
Mr. Adams? Mr. Grove? Mr. O10, yay. Mr. Wendell? Mr. Perilou? Ms. Boudreau? Mr. Lorraine?
Yes.
Motion passes with 8 yeas, 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 19, ordinance levying and imposing taxes for 2020 on all the property subject to taxation in the Parish of Lafourche Recreation District Number 2. Mr. Perilou for the administration. Can I get a second? A second by Mr. Wendell. Anyone from the public like to comment on item 19? 1 time, 2 times. Anyone from the public 3 times? Anyone from the council? There being none, we'll move this to a roll call vote. Mr. Lorraine? Ms. Boudreau? Mr. Perilou? Mr. Wendell? O10, yay. Mr. Grove? Mr. Adams? Mr. Jones?
Yay.
Motion passes with 7 yeas, 1 abstention, that abstention being Ms. Boudreau, and 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 20, ordinance levying and imposing taxes for 2020 on all the property subject to taxation in the Parish of Lafourche Fire Protection District Number 1. Mr. Perilou for the administration. I got a second by Mr. Wendell. Anyone from the public like to comment on item 20? One time, two times, three times. Anyone from the council? There being none, we'll move it to a roll call vote. Mr. Jones?
Yay.
Mr. Adams? Mr. Grove? Vote 10 yea. Mr. Wendell? Mr. Perilou? Ms. Boudreau? Mr. Lorraine?
Yes.
Motion passes with 8 yeas, 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 21, ordinance levying and imposing taxes for 2020 on all the property subject to taxation in the Parish of Lafourche Fire Protection District Number 7. Moved by Mr. Wendell on Mr. Melvin's behalf of the administration, second by Mr. Perilou. Would anyone from the public like to comment on item 21? One time, two times, three times. Anyone from the council? There being none, we'll move it to a roll call vote. Mr. Lorraine? Ms. Boudreau? Mr. Perilou? Mr. Wendell? Vote 10 yea. Mr. Grove? Mr. Adams? Mr. Jones?
Yay.
Motion passes with 8 yeas, 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 22, ordinance levying and imposing taxes for 2020 on all the property subject to taxation in the Parish of Lafourche Fire Protection District Number 4. Mr. Wendell will move on behalf of Mr. Melvin for the administration, second by Mr. Perilou. Would anyone from the public like to comment on this? One time, two times, three times. Anyone from the council? There being none, we'll move it to a roll call vote. Mr. Jones?
Yay.
Mr. Adams? Mr. Grove? Vote 10 yea. Mr. Wendell? Mr. Perilou? Ms. Boudreau? Mr. Lorraine?
Yeah.
Motion passes with 8 yeas, 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. I now entertain a motion to close public hearing. So moved by Mr. Wendell, second by Mr. Perilou. Any discussion? Mr. Lorraine?
Yes, if you don't mind, can we deviate after this to the agenda item number 51? A couple of people have to travel back.
So I have a motion, someone's already asked me for a motion for a recess, for a 10-minute recess. So I mean, it's up to the
Do that
council.
real quick, if you don't mind?
First off, I have to close public hearing. Let me close public hearing. Any discussion on closing public hearing? Mr. Jones? Nope. No. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes with 8 yeas and 1 absence. That absence being Mr. Melvin to close public hearing. Now, at this point, we need to Mr. Adams has a motion on the floor. He asked me to take a recess. Okay, so he wants to hold off on his motion. Thank you. So at this point, I will entertain a motion to deviate from the agenda and go back to public wishing to address the council. Correct?
No,
Item
we need to get
51.
to 51, item 51.
So you want to skip why don't we just go back to public wishing to address the council? They can talk on any item they want.
Well, that's fine, whatever you
Okay,
want to do.
so I got a motion by Mr. Lorraine to return back to the regular scheduled agenda,
Second.
which was at item F, public wishing to address the council, second by Mr. Jones. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes with 8 yeas, 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Ms. Carleen?
Mr. Price Bourgeois, if you'd approach the podium, sir, state your name and address, Mr. Bourgeois. Please remember you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Price Bourgeois, 333 Camellia Drive, Thibodaux, Louisiana. It's kind of ironic today, y'all just went through 22 tax resolutions, and that's basically what I'm here to talk about. We have multiple elections throughout the year, usually renewals or maybe new tax proposals, whatever they might be. They're always put on different sections. It might be, in fact, we had one just a few weeks ago. We had one in May, and there's some of them that have been delayed. Anyway, when I ask about this all the time, I always get this pretty much the same two answers. Why do we have these spread out? Typically, councilmen or representatives usually tell me it's because of the rules of the Secretary of State. They schedule the elections. Well, that's not necessarily true. We can put our ballots on a scheduled date yearly on the same dates, whether it be you do it twice a year. That's a very large amount of things to vote for. But at the same time, I think things like the library numbers, those types of things should be put all on one ballot at one time. It's our responsibility as voters to go out, but at the same time, I didn't know that we were supposed to have something in January and October, November, 2 weeks after the presidential runoff. There's just too many ballots, too many times. There is dollars that make sense on this. Roughly about $140,000 was that last one. That's from the Parish School all the way down to Golden Meadow. If that would have been put on at the same time as the state ballot, they might have paid up to half of that. So there's a lot of money in this. And going every year, we spend anywhere, portions that are not covered by the state, this is just ours, between 130,000 and I want to say the highest I have is about 150,000 one year. All things that could have been split with the state. Not to say we could get 21 ballots on the same time as the state ballot, but we could probably do a better job if instead of having 4, 5, 6, 7 different renewal elections or ballots or new proposals, we could do this in 2 times.
Thank you, Mr. Price. Would anyone like to have any comments on that? Mr. Grove?
Price, thank you for coming and, thank you for sending, the information to me, that your research found. The problem, I think, and I did a little digging myself because it's a common thing. People, it feels like people sneak in on elections. But the state sets these elections. They do. I think you maybe need to go to the state.
I already talked to the Secretary of State last week. It says, are there any restrictions that would prohibit parish or local government from holding one tax-based election a year? And roughly how much would that say?
One more time. But I'm not talking about just tax, what happens, somebody passes away in office or gets arrested, they hold a special election because they have to be put in a certain amount of time, and then people start jumping on. That's the way I read it.
And I apologize, I'm really focusing this more towards taxes.
Okay.
Than I am if a judge passes or if, God forbid, anyway. This is more on the tax side. The 2 things I hear as a citizen and myself, 2 weeks ago or several months ago, there was this millage passed or that millage passed, and I had no idea about it. Now, what I always get told is, well, it's on the doors of the parish government. It's at the Register of Voters. It's on TV. I don't watch I think it's channel 11 or something very often. Sorry, I don't. A lot of people don't even have that. I have not picked up a newspaper in 20-something years. I get my news on that little pad. So while, yeah, we do the legal part, what we legally have to do to announce these things, but the honest truth is we know that it's not getting out. We know that.
Well, I'll tell you this, the library one was on a primary election, so it's not like it was snuck in. I'm just saying for reference.
I understand.
I mean, I just don't want you to, insinuate that they're being snuck
But there is a monetary
in.
side of this. There is is it cheaper to have 5 elections a year, or would it be better to have 2? The other part of that, and to speak on the feasibility of it, the state is actually reducing their number of elections, of things on the ballot, not necessarily elections. When I say elections, I mean whether it be laws or amendments. They're reducing their number, and they're trying to push that into the next session, possibly the year after. And that comes from the Secretary of State. They are trying to move that down to less and less because the cost that's involved in it. Who absorbs the cost of whenever a proposal goes through for a tax renewal? It's one tax renewal in one district. Who pays that? Does the general fund pay it, or does that millage pay it? And either way, it's the same money. It's our money. It's our parish money, and it's a waste. And to be honest with you, I've got some ideas on how you could get turnout and all that, but I won't do that here.
Very good. Mr. Wendell?
I just have one comment to Mr. Price. Thank you for getting involved. I debated with you on Facebook a little bit about this.
That's not a good place for that.
But it, we actually gained some traction and opened up some eyes and brought it to light. Another question, I don't know if this is for Ms. Carleen or maybe you can answer. A few months ago, and this kind of goes along with this, I don't know if we petitioned or we asked about our official journal advertising and if we could change it and how we could change it. And are we pretty much stuck with newspaper is what we legally have to do?
Until the state legislature changes it, yes. And that was a fight that Reggie Bagala had taken up. So I don't know if anyone has picked that
Okay.
up as of yet. Anyone knows? They haven't.
So that's what's legally has to be done as a minimum, right? Could you go above and beyond that?
Well, what he's talking about is it's a cost that we're absorbing, that we want to do away with because it's a wasted cost.
Right, I understand. But to go above and beyond that, I guarantee you, I don't know exactly where y'all live, but with $500, I could get a video in front of every one of y'all. Probably within the next 48 hours. You know, if you turn on any computer, I could get it in front of you. Now, that's not to say we need to do that. I mean, I'm not saying that, but there are better ways that we could go about it. Hell, how much would it cost to mail one piece of mail to every address in the parish? Bulk mail, 150,000, probably about 30 cents, 20 cents a piece, roughly. You know, I don't know. There's better ways to do it, and I really think if we did 2 dates per year, and I know that you have time constraints and all those things, but you know what? If the library wants to get their renewal, by God, they'll have it done in time. They won't be making you vote on it on a special day in order to get it in front of the Secretary of State so that it can be crammed down in a November duck season weekend.
Right.
You know?
And Price, I wasn't trying to stomp it in. I was just trying to make sure that we were still obligated for that journal and we couldn't,
Yeah, how do you reach all the
go any
people?
other way with it. All right, thank you. Thank you for coming out.
Thank you, Mr. Wendell. Thank you, Mr. Bourgeois. Okay, next, Ms. Carleen.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
So,
Uh,
he didn't fill out a paper, Mr. Chairman, but what Daniel was getting to is,
Well, I thought Mr. Harold Block had filled, so he didn't fill out a paper to address the council.
he was thinking that you guys were gonna go to item 51, that's all it was.
Yeah, if you don't mind, let's do that real quick, so that y'all can address, they're up in the back over there, Ryan. Yeah, as soon as he talks. As he's filling it out, Mr. Harold, if you don't mind, just state your name and address for the record, and you can go ahead and begin speaking.
Is it on? Is it on?
Yes.
Okay.
Hear you loud and clear.
My name is Harold Block, 515 Canal Boulevard, Thibodaux, Louisiana. And Mr. Ryan and I are here to discuss item number 51 on tonight's agenda, which is a refunding of the state road, the Lafourche Parish Road Tax District A. And we'd like to recommend to you that the council consider this. It's a way of saving about $200,000 over a period of about 5 or 6 years. The interest rate on these bonds, the current existing outstanding bonds, is about 3.4%. And we're pretty certain if they were reissued today, and of course we all know the interest rates fluctuate, but if they were reissued today, the rate would be about 1.4%. So the difference of 2% is the savings. And that $200,000 is after all fees and all expenses. So when you get to item 51, we would ask that you approve it, and I'll ask Jim Ryan to say a few words.
Thank you, Harold. Jim Ryan, Government Consultants, 17001 Shady Arbor Lane, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, 70817. As you guys know, or most of you know, I've been your financial advisor for about 12 years now. This is kind of a no-brainer. If we can't achieve the state-mandated savings thresholds after all fees and expenses, after we lower the rate and after we pay for everything, the State Bond Commission has savings thresholds that we have to meet after all fees and expenses. If we can't achieve that, we cannot legally close the deal. We can't do it, and you owe nobody nothing. So this is a deal either where we can save you the amount of money that the state dictates that we have to save you after we all get paid. If we can't, we can't do it. You don't owe anybody anyway. This is just like refinancing your house. This is all this is. We're borrowing money to pay off some bonds we did back in 2012 for y'all, and then you're going to pay a lower payment. It's pretty simple. There's no risk to y'all. And as your independent registered municipal advisor, it is my recommendation, and I have a fiduciary for you new guys on the council, new guys and gals. I have a fiduciary responsibility to act in your best interest, not mine. So when I make a recommendation to you, I have to tell you what I think is best for you, not for me. So as your independent registered municipal advisor, it is my recommendation you move forward with this transaction. We will have to come back here at least one more time, probably twice for an ordinance introduction and then an ordinance to give you all the final numbers.
Very good. Anyone has any questions of Jim or Mr. Block? Anyone? Anyone? Everybody's good? 51 comes up, nobody have any questions. Thank y'all. We appreciate Mr. Ryan and Mr. Block being here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr.
Absolutely.
President. Thank you, members of the council.
Good deal. Very good.
I'm so glad you're back.
With that said, I got a motion on the floor with Mr. Adams that we take a 10-minute break, second by Mr. Wendell. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes with 8 yeas, 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. 10 minutes. Okay, right now we got a motion on the floor by Mr. Adams, second by Mr. Jones to return back to the meeting. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes with 8 yeas, 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Now we'll have to deviate back to item I, the regular agenda. So moved by Mr. Grow, second by Mr. Adams. This will bring us back to item I. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes with 8 yeas, 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item I, public hearing and ordinances for ratification. I'll now have to entertain a motion to open public hearing. So moved by Mr. Wendell, second by Mr. Lorraine. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes with 8 yeas, 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Okay, item 23, ordinance amending ordinance 6216 to increase the speed limit from 15 miles per hour to 25 miles per hour on Terre Haute Place, Houma, Louisiana, Ward 11, District 5, Parish of Lafourche, State of Louisiana, providing for the placement of speed limit signs and providing penalties for the violations thereof. So moved by Mr. Wendell, second by Mr. Perillo. Would anyone from the public like to comment on item 23? 1 time, 2 times, 3 times? Anyone from the council? Mr. Wendell.
23 through 27 is a problem area in Bayou Blue that the previous councilman adjusted some speed limits at the request of a few people. We've had the sheriff's office go out, do some traffic studies. We've done some stealth things out there to get some true speeds and everything. By the standard of the roadway, the way it is, we've come up between the sheriff's office, the council, we've come up with an amended speed limit to go back to where it was in the back and towards the front of the street a little bit lower, similar to what Mr. Jones said, because of some residents and some needs towards the front. In the meantime, Mr. Grove, myself, Lieutenant Foreman with the Sheriff's Office, we talked about getting together a small committee with some members of the Planning Commission to take a look at some of these new subdivisions and new areas to make sure that we're evaluating them correctly before speed limits are assigned and different traffic rules are placed in those areas. That way the council, I don't want to say the council isn't burdened, but that way we don't have to keep revisiting all these speed issues in these new subdivisions and areas where it's either too low or too high and we're constantly swapping signs and going back and forth. So these 5 are in one area. The 5 or 6 that are after that are in a different area, all in the same subdivision that was calculated incorrectly. So we're just bringing it to the level that it needs to be according to the geographical area and the composition of the different streets that are in those areas. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Wendell. My only comment would be, Mr. President and Dylan, is that all these items I'm sure will likely pass. But that's obviously the taxpayers are going to absorb a cost. We have to go out there and change all these signs back and whatnot. But I would certainly hope that it's done in the off season. There's too many ditches that need to be worked on and too many roads and drainage, et cetera. So I would certainly hope that when y'all plan, that these things are planned. I don't know what the ordinance requires, a mandate, how fast you have to get them out there. But, every time we change, myself and Mr. Wendell were talking earlier, there's a cost associated with it. But even worse than that for us is we have limited man hours. And those man hours at this time of the year are certainly prioritized on drainage. But anyway, with that said, anyone else from the council like to comment on this? If not, we'll move it to a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 8 yeas, 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 24, ordinance to rescind ordinance numbers 3341, 5013, and 6217 as it pertains to various speed limits on Mary Beth Avenue, Houma, Louisiana, Ward 11, District 5, Parish of Lafourche, State of Louisiana, moved by Mr. Wendell, second by Mr. Perillo. Would anyone from the public like to comment? Item 24, 1 time, 2 times, 3 times? Anyone from the council? There being none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes, 8 yeas, 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 25, ordinance establishing a 20 miles per hour speed limit on Mary Beth Avenue, Houma, Louisiana, Ward 11, District 5, Parish of Lafourche, State of Louisiana, providing for the placement of speed limit sign and to also provide for the placement of 1 yellow reduced speed sign below the first speed limit sign traveling from Cherahut Place at the foot of the bridge and providing penalties for the violations thereof. So moved by Mr. Wendell, second by Mr. Perillo. Would anyone from the public like to comment on this? 1 time? 2 times, anyone from the public? 3 times, anyone from the council? There being none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion passes, 8 yeas, 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 26, ordinance establishing a 5 miles per hour speed limit on Jewel Street, extending to Jewel Street Extension, Houma, Louisiana, Ward 11, District 5, Parish of Lafourche, State of Louisiana, providing for the placement of 1 speed limit sign 50 feet from the intersection of Cherahut Place and providing penalties for the violations thereof. So moved by Mr. Wendell, second by Mr. Perillo. Would anyone from the public like to comment? 1 time, 2 times, anyone from the public? 3 times, anyone from the council? There being none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes, 8 yeas, 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 27, ordinance establishing a no parking fire lane throughout Jewel Street, extending to the intersection of Jewel Street Extension, Houma, Louisiana, Ward 11, District 5, Parish of Lafourche, State of Louisiana, providing for the placement of 1 no parking fire zone sign to be installed onto the speed limit sign on Jewel Street and providing penalties for the violations thereof. Moved by Mr. Wendell, second by Mr. Lorraine. Would anyone from the public like to comment? 1 time, 2 times, anyone from the public? 3 times, anyone from the council? There being none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes with 8 yeas, 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 28, ordinance amending ordinance number 5723 to reduce the speed limit from 25 miles per hour to 15 miles per hour on Chestnut Ridge Drive in Highland Oak Subdivision, Gray, Louisiana, Ward 11, District 5, Parish of Lafourche, State of Louisiana, providing for the placement of speed limit and children at play signs, and to also add 1 speed check by radar sign at the first speed limit sign coming from the service road southwest and providing penalties for the violations thereof. So moved by Mr. Wendell, second by Mr. Perillo. Anyone from the public like to comment on item 28? 1 time, 2 times, anyone from the public? 3 times? Mr. Adams.
Yeah, I see the speed check by radar. I mean, the sign. Is somebody down there all the time checking it, or do we set up radars with the signs?
Anyone can answer that? Mr. Wendell?
I think it's more of a warning. I had several public meetings here. As you know, I work part-time for the sheriff's office. I have run radar in that neighborhood several times. There is a speeding limit with a speeding problem between the younger generation and the older generation. It is a very congested neighborhood, houses close to the street, driveways full, cars parked on the roadway. So it definitely needs to go down for the safety of the children in that area.
I'm good with the speed limit.
It was originally, we were originally going to set the fines in this particular area because of the repetitive violations. The sheriff's office going out there doing enforcement and everything. Just the sheer, disobeying of the fines. I mean, the speed limits at the fine was going to be set at $500 per penalty. And at the different neighborhood meetings that we had, they weren't in agreement with it. I didn't feel that it was warranted, but it definitely needs to be lower, and it will be strictly enforced for the first couple of months until everybody gets used to it. So we figured by putting up we were going to put up warning signs for the $500 fine, but we figured the speed control or check by radar at both the entrances would suffice to let them know that.
Okay, so I was just wondering if you actually had a radar near the sign or something, that's all.
So
they do have some stealth
Yeah.
things that are put out by the sheriff's office that are in the neighborhood and will continue to be in the neighborhood. So it was just a warning to the motoring public, I guess you would say.
So there's already a speeding problem at 25, and we're going to go down to 15?
Well, there's a speeding problem because they're trying to get to 25.
Okay.
And when they were pulled over and things were said, it was, well, the speed limit sign says we can go 25, so damn it, we're going to go 25. And it's just not safe to do so in the area that it's posted. And that goes into what I'd said before about the committee with Mr. Grow, the planning commission. That neighborhood should have never been set at 25.
Mr. Grow.
Just to add to that, I had an issue, sounds similar to this. When you have a house with a single width driveway and multiple people live there, and a lot of times people have more than one car, everybody's parking in the street, and it's a small, and the street's a regulation size, people are flying, and nobody can see, what's going on. So 25 and some of these things we talked about seem like they're very, it's too fast from the get-go. So I asked Ms. Pat and talked to, how these speed limits are set, and Jeffrey sent me some information, and had some forms we need to follow. And, Mr. Jim had agreed to even be on, he'll look at every one of them, because not every neighborhood is the same, if you have.
I'll review them parish-wide for
Yeah.
every councilman, for everything that's submitted to the planning commission.
Sometimes 25 is too fast, or 20 is too fast. If they go on 20, it's way over the speed limit. It seems like it's speeding, but it's really not. It's just, it never was graded right.
And when we talked to these folks about how unsafe it was to be traveling that speed, the response was, well, we can legally do it, and they're right, but it's just not practical.
Understood. I know we've had people come up here before, though, to say they drive at 15 with certain vehicles, they have to ride their brakes. We had somebody come last year that told us that's very, very slow. I'm just commenting.
Yeah, in this neighborhood, you really do have to ride your brakes because of all the activity going on.
Okay. Okay, any further discussion on item 28? There being none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes with 8 yeas, 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 29, ordinance amending ordinance number 5723 to reduce the speed limit from 25 miles per hour to 15 miles per hour on Magnolia Bluff Drive in Highland Oaks subdivision, Gray, Louisiana, Ward 11, District 5, Parish of Lafourche, State of Louisiana, providing for the placement of speed limit signs and providing for penalties for the violations thereof. Moved by Mr. Wendell, second by Mr. Perillo. Anyone from the public like to comment on this? 1 time, 2 times, anyone from the public 3 times, anyone from the council? There being none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 8 yeas, 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 30, ordinance amending ordinance number 5723 to reduce the speed limit from 25 miles per hour to 15 miles per hour on Red Maple Drive in Highland Oaks subdivision, Gray, Louisiana, Ward 11, District 5, Parish of Lafourche, State of Louisiana, providing for the placement of speed limit signs and providing penalties for the violations thereof. Moved by Mr. Wendell, second by Mr. Perillo. Would anyone from the public like to comment on this? 1 time, 2 times, anyone from the public 3 times, anyone from the council? There being none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes with 8 yeas, 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 31, ordinance amending ordinance number 5723 to reduce the speed limit from 25 miles per hour to 15 miles per hour on Highland Oaks Avenue in Highland Oaks subdivision, Gray, Louisiana, Ward 11, District 5, Parish of Lafourche, State of Louisiana, providing for the placement of speed limit and children at play signs, providing for the placement of 1 speed check by radar sign at the first speed limit sign coming from the Louisiana Highway 316 by Blue Road, and providing for the placement of 2 5 miles per hour yellow advisory speed limit signs with 1 facing each direction at the rear 90-degree curve on Highland Oaks Avenue, and providing penalties for the violations thereof. Moved by Mr. Wendell, second by Mr. Perillo. Anyone from the public would like to comment on this one? Item 31. 1 time, 2 times, anyone from the public 3 times, anyone from the council? There being none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes with 8 yeas, 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 32, ordinance amending ordinance number 5723 to reduce the speed limit from 25 miles per hour to 15 miles per hour on River Birch Avenue in Highland Oaks subdivision, Gray, Louisiana, Ward 11, District 5, Parish of Lafourche, State of Louisiana, providing for the placement of speed limit signs and providing penalties for the violations thereof. Moved by Mr. Wendell, second by Mr. Perillo. Anyone from the public would like to comment on this? 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, anyone from the council? There being none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes with 8 yeas, 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 33, ordinance amending ordinance number 5723 to reduce the speed limit from 25 miles per hour to 15 miles per hour on Hickory Knoll Avenue in Highlands Oak subdivision, Gray, Louisiana, Ward 11, District 5, Parish of Lafourche, State of Louisiana, providing for the placement of speed limit and children at play signs and providing penalties for the violations thereof. Moved by Mr. Wendell, second by Mr. Perillo. Would anyone from the public like to comment on this? 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, anyone from the council? There be none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes with 8 yeas, 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 34, ordinance amending ordinance number 6040 to reduce the speed limit from 25 miles per hour to 15 miles per hour on Loblolly Pine Drive in Highland Oaks subdivision, Gray, Louisiana, Ward 11, District 5, Parish of Lafourche, State of Louisiana, providing for the placement of speed limit signs and providing penalties for the violations thereof. Moved by Mr. Wendell, second by Mr. Perillo. Would anyone from the public like to comment on item 34? 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. Anyone from the council? There being none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion passes with 8 yeas, 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 35, ordinance establishing a 3-way stop at the intersection of Highland Oaks Avenue and Red Maple Drive in Highland Oaks subdivision, Gray, Louisiana, Ward 11, District 5, Parish of Lafourche, State of Louisiana, installing the necessary 2 additional stop signs and providing penalties for the violations thereof. Moved by Mr. Wendell, second by Mr. Perillo. Would anyone from the public like to comment on item 35? 1 time, 2 times. Anyone from the public? 3 times. Anyone from the council? There being none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes with 8 yeas, 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 36, ordinance establishing a 3-way stop at the intersection of Highland Oaks Avenue and Loblolly Pine Drive in Highland Oaks subdivision, Gray, Louisiana, Ward 11, District 5, Parish of Lafourche, State of Louisiana, installing the necessary 2 additional stop signs and providing penalties for the violations thereof. Moved by Mr. Wendell, second by Mr. Perillo. Would anyone from the public like to comment on this? 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. Anyone from the council? My only comment, I would just ask if Mr. Dillon or Mr. President, if y'all could generate a cost for all these, for this one subdivision. I don't want it, but I'd like for Mr. Wendell and Mr. Grow to have it when they do discuss with the planning commission on seeing the added cost when we don't get it right the first time. I'd appreciate that. Sounds good.
This is the second subdivision in Bayou Blue by the same building contractor that we've had to go in after the fact and adjust the speed limit on every street. Now, the last subdivision was only 4 streets to the 7 or 8 in this neighborhood, but it's the exact same setup and the exact same issues.
I think it'd be good to have that, useful to have that information. Very good. Mr. President.
Can I factor in the carpal tunnel exams I'm gonna have when I have to sign all these ordinances tomorrow morning?
Hey, I feel bad for Nooney right now, but I had to read them last week.
Through a mask that you can't breathe through, so, yeah. No, we good. No problem. So there being no further discussion, we're still on item 36. We'll move it to a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion passes with 8 yeas, 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 37, ordinance approving a servitude agreement between several property owners in Lafourche Parish government in the Racine area and authorizing the parish president to sign, execute, and administer said agreement and any all relevant documents. Mr. Wendell will move on Mr. Melvin's behalf of the administration, second by Ms. Boudreau. Would anyone from the public like to comment on item 37? 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. Anyone from the council? There being none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion passes 8 yeas, 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 38, ordinance providing for a 2020 supplemental appropriation 20-026 within the 2020 operations and maintenance budget to increase the budget for the low-income home energy assistance program LAHEAP agreement to increase the LAHEAP agreement with the CARES Act funding and authorizing the parish president to sign, execute, and administer said transactions as provided for by Article 6 of the Lafourche Parish Home Rule Charter. Moved by Mr. Jones for the administration, second by Mr. Adams. Would anyone from the public like to comment on item 38? 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. Anyone from the council? There being none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion passes with 8 yeas, 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 39, ordinance providing a variance in the proposed redivision of Lot 9 to the estate of Florence Simone Melisson into Lot 9A and Lot 9B, and with no recommendation by the Lafourche Parish Planning Commission. This will be moved by Mr. Adams for the administration. Can I get a second? Can I get a second? Second by Ms. Boudreau. I will read, I did have a letter while we're in the public wishing to address the council. This was an email from to the Planning Commission members from Georgiana Jan Robinson, date June 25th, 2020, RE Estate of Florence Melisson into Lot 9A and 9B. As long as the developer is following all rules and regulations with the parish and state, she has no objection for the above referenced division of property. So I guess that's just saying that she's okay with it being divided, not so much about the variance from what our standard is. Anyone from the public would like to comment beyond that? 1 time, 2 times. Anyone from the public? 3 times. Mr. Adams.
So that email is a little tricky.
Okay.
So what's happening, the reasons for the variance is, it states in the, whatever you call it, ordinance, that it needs to be 25 foot.
Everybody for 25.
So this one here is when they take it and they put it, they split it in two lots, it's only 20 foot. So instead of 40 foot together, it's 50. But if you go back, there's a lot of history goes on with what happened there, and it was very ugly. So I'm just asking, I see no reason it's 20 foot, it's a whole street. And that's one driveway is 20 foot. I think that's way more than enough for one driveway. So that's, just asking y'all, just so y'all know.
Mr. Grove,
Who was the email from, again?
Miss Jan Robinson.
Okay. And she is,
She don't live there, that's a tenant.
okay, so she's a tenant, she's not the.
No, she's not the tenant, she owns the property.
She owns the property, okay.
She's just saying as long as the developer follows all rules and regulations within the parish state, she has no objection. So normally what happens, just for those who don't know, the planning commission would have looked at this and they would have sent a recommendation yea or nay to us. However, they haven't met, so we don't have either way from the
Yeah.
planning commission.
Yeah. And again, it's not a development, it's one person living back there. They're building a house for themselves back there, they're not developing a subdivision. So it's just one person.
Mr. Grow, you still got your light on. You got another comment?
It's about a common driveway though, right? The whole thing?
It's driveways, 20.
Yeah, so what's happening is they're looking to subdivide the property. The mandate, the requirement by the parish is that you have to have a 25-foot right-of-way. They can't provide a 25-foot right-of-way if they split the land. The problem I have with any variance is it's not fair to the rest of the parish. It has to abide by 25 foot. Everybody else had to give 25 foot, not 20. That's and as y'all know, I've been against variances since day one because you're doing favors for somebody and somebody else is and not. So preferential treatment, I've said this in the past, y'all have heard it, nothing new. Mr. Lorraine.
Yeah, I think you have to look at this case by case. And with the planning commission not meeting, I'm waiting on some stuff with the planning commission myself, with a couple in my district. And we haven't been there, and according to what I was told, if something comes up twice to the planning commission and they're not meeting, it automatically goes in. So, Mr. Adams, you don't have a problem with this?
No, sir, I don't.
Well, that's what variances are for.
Okay, very good. Anyone else have any comments on this? If not, we'll move it to a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Nay. So if I'm not, I think I'm the only nay, right? All right, so it'll be 7 yeas, 1 nay, the nay being Mr. Otan and the absence being Mr. Melvin. Motion passes. So they are granted the variance. Okay, item 40, ordinance amending ordinance number 6327 that amended ordinance number 6281, 6301, and 6311, which adopted the 2020 operations and maintenance and capital budget for the Lafourche Parish Council, as well as setting the salaries of unclassified employees as provided for by Article 5 of the Lafourche Parish Home Rule Charter. Moved by Mr. Jones for the administration, second by Mr. Adams. Would anyone from the public like to comment on this? 1 time, 2 times, 3 times? Anyone from the council? I think this, Archie, just for clarification, this is about $200,000 a year for the 3 positions that the council has established, correct?
So it's not only the 3 department head positions, it's also 2 positions within the CSBG program for community action.
Very good. Anyone have any comments from the council? There being none, we'll move it to a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion passes with 8 yeas, 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 41, ordinance amending and reenacting Chapter 34, Special Districts of the Code of Ordinances, creating Article 26, or you can say XXVI, Industrial Development Board of the Parish of Lafourche, Incorporated, and authorizing the parish president to sign, execute, and administer any and all relevant documents. Moved by Mr. Adams for the administration, second by Mr. Jones. Would anyone from the public like to comment on item 41? 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. Anyone from the council? There being none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion passes with 8 yeas, 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 42, ordinance amending ordinance number 5785 and approved a lease agreement for 10 years between Lafourche Parish Government and Santo Lusco Jr. to provide for a public boat launch and canal use, and authorizing the parish president to sign, execute, and administer said lease agreement and any and all relevant documents. Moved by Mr. Wendell for the administration. Can I get a second? Second by Ms. Boudreaux. Anyone from the public like to comment on this? 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. Anyone from the council? Is it Mr. Perilou?
Yeah, I have a quick question. Have we been able to get more of the property for the boat launch in this ordinance?
Yeah, so that's exactly what this does. It expands the boat launch significantly.
Yeah.
And it also spells out in there, Mr. Santo Junior, I believe, the old man Santo, as I'll call him, not the one who works for us. He had some specific requirements when we do that. We have to extend a piece of road for him and put up a piece of fence.
Okay.
Just because we're taking some more property. So that's what the renegotiation of this lease was.
Perfect. Long time coming. Thank you.
We're talking about the Butch Hill boat launch. So for everybody out there, this would be an extension to the Butch Hill boat launch, which is overgrown. It's undersized.
And we're gonna, a lot of it is used during the summer, but a lot of it is used during duck season. I'm gonna do our best so we can try to get it done before the first split of duck season. But a lot of it's just gonna depend on the weather and materials and stuff like that.
Great. Very good. Thank you, Mr. President. With that said, any further discussion? There being none, we'll move it to a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes with 8 yeas, 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. I now have a motion on the floor by Mr. Wendell, seconded by Ms. Boudreaux, to close public hearings. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes with 8 yeas, 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Mr. Wendell, can you please read item J, proposed ordinances?
Number 43, proposed ordinance providing for 2020 supplemental appropriation 20-029 within the 2020 operations and maintenance budget to increase the budget for the GSBG fiscal year 2020 CARES Act money in the amount of $355,635 and authorizing the parish president to sign, execute, and administer said transactions as provided by Article 6 of the Lafourche Parish Home Rule Charter. Moved by Mr. Jones on behalf of administration. Item number 44, proposed ordinance providing for a 2020 supplemental appropriation 20-30 within the 2020 operations and maintenance budget and capital outlay budget to deobligate the EAU Clare Pump Station Project 17003 and create a drainage project in District Number 1, 20027, and authorizing the parish president to sign, execute, and administer said transactions as provided by Article 6 of the Lafourche Parish Home Rule Charter. Moved by Mr. Jones for administration. Item number 45, proposed ordinance amending and reenacting Chapter 8, Animals and Fowl of the Code of Ordinances as it pertains to the Lafourche Parish Animal Shelter, and authorizing the parish president to sign, execute, and administer any and all relative documents. Moved by Mr. Grow on behalf of administration.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Wendell. Item K, resolutions. 46, resolution approving change order number 2 to the project titled Marydale Sewer System Improvements, decreasing the contract price by $53,516 and authorizing the parish president to sign, execute, and administer said change order and any and all relevant documents. Moved by Mr. Jones for the administration, second by Mr. Adams. Any discussion? There being none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 8-1, 1 absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 47, resolution approving amendment number 2 to the agreement between Tyler Technologies Incorporated and Lafourche Parish Government for Munis Offsite Software as a Service, SaaS, hosting and authorizing the parish president to sign, execute, and administer said amendment and any and all relevant documents. Moved by Mr. Jones for the administration, second by Mr. Adams. Anyone from the council like to discuss this? If not, we'll move it to a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes with 8 yeas, 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 48, resolution approving the purchase of one 2020 Ford Transit 250 van in the amount of $33,793 from Courtesy Ford for the Lafourche Parish Animal Shelter and authorizing the parish president to sign, execute, and administer any and all relevant documents. Moved by Mr. Grove for the administration, second by Mr. Jones. Would anyone from the council like to discuss? There being none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes with 8 yeas, 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 49, resolution approving amendment number 1 to the cooperative endeavor agreement between Lafourche Parish Government and the Greater Lafourche Port Commission for the project titled South Lafourche Airport Corridor Project and authorizing the parish president to sign, execute, and administer said amendment and any and all relevant documents. Moved by Mr. Lorraine for the administration, second by Mr. Perilou. Anyone from the council like to discuss? There being none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion passes with 8 yeas, 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 50, resolution amending resolution number 20-150 that approved a subaward grant agreement between the Louisiana Workforce Commission, Office of Workforce Development, and Lafourche Parish Council, Office of Community Action to receive and administer the Community Services Block Grant Fiscal Year 2020 CARES Act funds to provide assistance to low-income families in Lafourche Parish in accordance with state requirements and authorizing the parish president to sign, execute, and administer said agreement and any all relevant documents. Moved by Mr. Jones for the administration, second by Mr. Adams. Anyone from the council like to discuss this? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes with 8 yeas, 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 51, resolution authorizing Consolidated Sales Tax District A of the Parish of Lafourche, State of Louisiana, to proceed with the issuance of its not to exceed $12 million of taxable public improvement revenue refunding bonds, providing certain terms of said bonds, making application to the State Bond Commission for approval of said bonds, appointing bond counsel, independent registered municipal advisor, and underwriter placement agent, and providing for other matters in connection therewith. Obviously written by a lawyer. Motion by Mr. Adams for the administration, second by Mr. Jones. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes with 8 yeas, 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 52, resolution requesting Louisiana Governor John Bel Edwards to enact COVID-19 recovery phases and restrictions on a regional basis in lieu of current statewide implementation, and further requesting that the criteria for entering Phase 3 be provided to all parishes. Moved by Mr. Wendell on my behalf of the administration. I would just comment, this is simply asking the governor, as some of the other parishes have, this is not to override anything he's done whatsoever. This is only asking him to consider that phases and restrictions be done on a regional basis. As we go forward, we don't know if a year from now, if we're going to be bouncing around on phases, that instead of just the whole state, that maybe he considers it on a regional basis. And then secondarily, if we can know what Phase 3 is. I know some of the festivals are hoping they can begin again. We just don't know what Phase 3 is, so we're hoping that he can identify that. So this is in no way override anything the government. We're just making a request, if that makes it clear. Mr. Lorraine.
Yeah, I just want to say that I think he had a press conference this afternoon. We still in 2?
Yeah, so Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. President.
So he made a comment in his press conference today that he has a conference call with the White House Coronavirus Task Force tomorrow. So we should have a decision tomorrow afternoon once he has that conference call.
Yes, but this is what I got to say. You can't make everybody happy. I don't care what you try and do. And 64 parishes can send this resolution to the governor. And he doesn't have to do anything with it. It's just on a piece of paper. It's just a request. I'm sure he's going to lead you in the right direction. I mean, some of the bars should be open. Some of the bars, you got to sell a hamburger and a hot dog to sell some beer or whatever. You know, but it's a simple request. And I still say it's a Republican-Democrat deal. And I'm going to say it all the time because that's what it is. And 64 parishes consented, it means nothing. He's going to do what he wants to do because he don't have to get reelected. He's got 3.5 years to go, and he's a lame duck governor. So you can send anything you want to him. It doesn't matter.
Thank you, Mr. Lorraine. Like I said, we're just hopeful that he looks at it on a regional basis instead of blanket the state. That's all. And hopefully he does listen to I'm hopeful that he does listen to our voice on what we're thinking. Because once again, this is not overriding, and this is not meant to be Republican or Democrat. And I don't think anywhere in there reflects that from what everyone has said. Mr. Jones.
Okay, I spoke with the parish president, and he asked for only a request that different region than Archer from Rome, region 5. 3,
yeah, region 3.
So that's what, St. John, St. James,
St. Mary,
St. Charles, Assumption, and Lafourche. Terrible. So, okay, but it's not no way, shape, or form of trying to overtake the government.
No, sir. Not messing with his emergency orders or anything along those lines. Thank you, Mr. Jones. Ms. Carleen, if you didn't catch it, Mr. Perillo had seconded that motion. I'm sorry if I didn't get that. Any further discussion? If not, we'll move it to a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes with 7 yeas, 1 nay, that nay being Mr. Lorraine, and 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item L, Parish President, Department Heads, Directors, or Manager Reports, Presentations, and our Updates. Item 53, Department of Public Works Representative to present a report. Mr. President, or Mr. Dillon?
Good evening. Good night, sorry. Okay, we'll get started with the September 2020 presentation. Starting out in District 1, this is Tiger Drive, swept roadside ditches. Moving to District 2 on Choctaw Road, swept roadside ditches. This is Farmer Lane Pump Station, installed the rebuilt pump. 40 Hoffman Road, repair potholes. Morvant Lane, swept roadside ditches. Rodriguez Street, repaired shoulder base failure. Moving to District 3 on Lee Drive, swept roadside ditches. District 4, Blue Bypass Road, put down limestone. 4 Point Drive, reset driveway culvert. Martinez Road, put down limestone. South Water Plant Road, extended culvert. Thoroughbred Drive, swept outfall canal. Moving to District 5, this is the Butch Hill Bridge. We repaired the bridge. This is a before shot. And you can see the failure on the right side picture. Also on the right, you can see there's supposed to be 4 old pilings there. You see the 4 new ones. If you look to the bottom on the right side, that's one of the pilings that failed and why we had an issue. It's almost non-existent. This is more pictures of the repair. And in this, but because we have so many budget constraints here lately, we reuse, this is the old Lockport lift span bridge. Let's just see the grading on it. And this is the finished product. We had to do this in order to swing an engine at Twin Oaks Pump Station. We couldn't get the crane across the old bridge. So this is a picture of us swinging the engine as soon as the bridge was fixed. This is Faith Street, swept a roadside ditch. LaCroix Drive, clean culverts. Louise Lane, replaced collapsed driveway culvert. Pointe-a-Chat installed signage and HESCO baskets to barricade a levee. Maxine Boulevard installed stop sign and object marker signs. Mia Drive outfall, cutting grass. This is Lafourche Parish Fire Protection District 1 right-of-way. This is off of Highway 182. This is a picture of us clearing the right-of-way. Moving to District 6, Io Street, swept roadside ditches. Hagberry Street, swept roadside ditches. This is the intersection of LA 1 and Highway 90, cleaned the biocide. St. Anne Street outfall, swept outfall. Moving to District 7, Susanna Street, remove rotten culverts. Remove collapsed landscape culverts. North Napoleon, replace rotten culvert. Oakard Drive, replace rotten driveway culvert. Adam Boulevard, remove rotten culverts. On Emile Drive, this is the removal of the railroad track and opening of the drainage ditch. This was done by a contractor that was selected by the railroad company. Here you'll see the before, and then moving to the after. Same thing on Myrtle Drive, removal of the railroad track and opening of the drainage ditch. Here's before and after. Moving to District 8, East 3rd Street, cutting grass. Holy Rosary School, we have finally completed this collapsed culvert. This was kind of a nightmare. The more we dug, the more we found. We thought we were building a catch basin. We ended up replacing 50 feet of culvert and a catch basin. Yeah, the more we opened them, the more trouble we found. And here's the finished product. It came out really well. District 8, East 19th Street, swept roadside ditches. East 19th Street, replaced rotten driveway culvert. East 25th Place, replaced rotten driveway culverts. East 40th Street, replaced rotten cross culvert. This is a before and after. East 53rd, repaired pothole. East 57th Street, installed driveway culvert, East 71st Street, installed driveway culvert. This is the intersection of Highway 3235 and West 11th. This is a long overdue project. We finally got the DOTD permit and moved on this one. We have not had a major rainfall event yet. We're hoping that we see some improvement when we do get one. West 11th Street installed no through traffic signs. West 21st Street outfall, cut grass. West 80th Street installed driveway culvert. Moving to District 9, Canal District outfall, cut the outfall. East 75th Street, replace rotten driveway culvert. West 118th Street, swept roadside ditches. West 123rd Street, built catch basin. This was kind of a unique situation. They had a cross culvert going on the road that tied into nothing. When somebody did that landscape culverts, they just didn't include it. So we went in, extended all the culverts, and built a custom basin. This is a picture that was taken between Tropical Storm Marco and Hurricane Laura. This is the outside of the Pointe-aux-Chenes flood structure. The water was about a +4.5 when we went and visited this. Archie and I took a boat ride with the Terrebonne and South Lafourche Levee District. Just thought it was a neat picture I'd share. This is some drone footage that our communications director, Robbie Lee, helped me do. He went out here and took all the drone footage. We're going to play a video of 3 major projects that we did. This is Cyprian Pump Station. This is the installation of pumps 1 and 2 after they were repaired. You can see pump 2 is going in. Since pump 1 and 2 are operational, of course now pump 3 has given us some issues, not the pump itself, but the gear drive has failed on us, so we're currently having it rebuilt.
Is that gear drive the last thing for that station?
I hope so.
That's what I wanted to hear.
This is the bridge repair that I showed you in the photos. This is a crane driving pilings. On this particular project, we contracted sea level to drive 4 60-foot pilings and replace the cap. Everything else was done in-house. Just the pile driving we needed outsourced.
Uploaded those bridge sections in-house as well?
Mm-hmm. And the last video you're going to see in this little clip is the Union Pacific Railroad removal as far as the Lockport branch. Chairman Oltan can help me on this one. I think the railroad has not been utilized since 2011. Is that correct?
Yeah, last time I put a railroad on was 2011.
So it's been 2011 since it's been utilized. So there's some drainage obstructions with this railroad track.
They just granted, actually, they hired their own contractor, but they agreed to remove some problem drainage areas. That's it. Nothing's been dededicated, nothing's been, they wanted to go in front of the retirement board in DC, and there was an injunction filed, so they just said, to heck with it, we'll just keep owning the land, and it'll just sit there for infinity. It's about I think it's 13 miles from Raceland to Valentine. And nobody uses it. And
There's nothing south of Valentine.
to fix, correct it, the rail ends, the last spur is off in Valentine, around by the pontoon bridge, right at the pontoon bridge, matter of fact.
This right here shows a stretch of 6 ditches that were cut through after the railroads were removed. We just passed the first one. You'll see the remaining 5. We did a total of 12 rail removals in this project. 10 of them were open ditches that were cut through.
What's unfortunate is the rail runs parallel to the bayou. So, you know, as y'all know, this is a natural levee we live on. And so as you go perpendicular from the bayou, elevation drops. So the drainage basically runs right into the railroad, the whole length from Raceland to Valentine. So it's a secondary levee, and some of the culverts were built, they were wooden culverts. So they've collapsed, and some of it's on private properties. It's not necessarily a parish has right away, so it's a huge mess, is really what it is. But we've had new developments, Myrtle Drive, where we had to put, we couldn't, they tell us you could bore underneath it, but who wants to pay the money to bore? It's a lot easier to just go dig and, so anyway, sore subject. That took from I initiated this in 2014 or 2015 to try to get these culverts out, and it just got done. So just goes to show you the effort it takes.
I will note that Emil Drive, I don't know if you've been back there since, but this is the first time I've seen the ditches in Emil Drive dry.
Yeah, this house right here had water all the way up to almost to the bottom of the house because of rainfall, and it's because the water piling up at the railroad track. So now they're all begging for a bigger rainfall and a bigger rainfall because they want to see what's going to happen. All the residents are anxious to see a big rainfall. They're very happy, very pleased with the parish for pushing this forward.
I don't want to see a large rainfall event, but I am curious to see what it'll do. And this should be wrapping up the end of the video. Any questions?
Anyone have any questions for Dylan? Doesn't look like it, Dylan. So we appreciate it. I do know that y'all had to put HESCO baskets over by Eagle. Is that correct? Yeah, that was problematic because they had obstructions in the right of way or something.
Yeah, there was a barge in place, so we just, usually we can get away with around 250 feet of HESCO baskets. We had to go at 320.
So I would respectfully ask that we engage the North Lafourche Levy District.
We have.
What kind of resolution we can come with? Excellent. And I want to thank y'all on behalf of Ms. Boudreaux for Holy Rosary, because what y'all didn't notice, when they had to replace all that pipe, when Dylan was saying it turned into a big, so the cave-in or the washout was right where the kids walk on the sidewalk. So, and I'm not talking about a little washout, I'm talking about the whole cement had collapsed down and was going into the bayou. Ms. Boudreaux.
I don't have a question, but I did want to thank Dylan for getting on that project as well as the West 11th Street project, getting with DOTD, working all that out. It was a lot of red tape and he had to go through it, but it was all for good reason. And the people, I'm sure, are very pleased. And
I hope.
We'll see what's going to happen.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Boudreaux. Thank you, Dylan. Oh, Mr. Jones.
Dale, can you see about getting that giraffe machine to cut the trees in Diplomat Way ditch?
Diplomat Way ditch, yes, sir.
And we need the other track machine to get in a concrete ditch on Euclid and clean it out again.
Okay.
So it's getting pretty clogged up.
Okay.
Mr. Adams.
So if you get that machine over there in Thibodeau, you can go ahead and go shred that ditch back there behind Emerald Park, can you, please? Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you, Dylan. We appreciate your presentation. Anything else to add, Mr. President?
So just a couple of quick things. One, I want to, for everybody who's watching, publicly congratulate Ms. Trinette Wallace. She's a teacher at West Thibodeau Middle School. She was the 2021 State Middle School Teacher of the Year. So very good.
Outstanding.
Proud citizen of Lafourche Parish. And also a little tribute to Mr. Curtis Hendon, who was a custodian for us at the Wallace Center in Raceland. Passed away over the weekend after a brief illness with cancer. That guy never was a day where you didn't see a smile on his face. He had a tremendous love for the kids, not only at the Head Start, but the Wallace Center, and he will be deeply missed by everyone who was around that facility.
Thank you. Very good. Mr. President, I move to item M, discussion. I'll go by council member, Mr. Lorraine. Any final comments?
Yeah, I want you on that project on 3235, her district and my district. Are they going to finish that one day?
Maybe you got, what, 2 terms left? Maybe.
Yeah, I think I can go 2 more if the people support me.
Yeah, I'll follow up with DOT tomorrow, but the last time we talked to them, which was last week, they were still waiting on some of that signal equipment to come in.
Because
so they can install.
I have a person in my district that, she lives right across from Walmart. I mean, it's bad. It's not that much in my area, it's mostly in her area, but I still have some.
And I will tell you, we did speak with Mr. Eric Calavoda with DOTD about the section in Leeville between the toll gantry and the boat launch. His documents show, and he has some pictures, that they repaved that thing in 2008 when they turned it over to us, or just about 2008, right before they turned it over. So he's basically saying they're done with their portion of it, so if we wanted to repave it, it would be our responsibility to do that. So that's a budget discussion, I guess, for next year, if we want to include that in a road sales tax district 2 project or something like that.
I got 2, 3 quick things, and I'd like to send a letter to by Lafourche Freshwater for spraying the lilies. They really did a good job there. And number 2, I'd like to thank Representative Chuck Gisclair for getting that project that's taking forever to build, and they're getting ready to start a project from half of Golden Meadow to the Leeville Bridge, unless we could change it, and that was during his tenure of being in office. That's why I always say there's a lot of times you get something done and it's done after you're gone. And that's a prime example, because that was his 2 babies. And I'm sure Mr. Ogeron's gonna do a good job.
Ms. Boudreaux? Nothing? Mr. Perilou? Mr. Window? Mr. Grove?
I just wanted to kind of bring up again, nothing's an attack on any of these taxing districts. I think we had good dialogue on this tonight, and I know it started a few weeks back. It should have started years ago when she did that presentation on the water hose, and it's just, people just need to look at. I mean, I know a lot of people, we always talk about how people don't want to get on boards, and a lot of these boards, they're not paying positions and they're giving up their time. But I'm just asking if people could really just look into some of these taxes that they have and look into the accounts. And I want to commend the people like on the board at the center that actually rolled theirs back and went out there and took less money in and lived on what they had, because we are in a bind. I mean, we are, I went in my budget meeting after T-Boo, and he said, man, don't go in there, they broke. And it's I hate to joke about it, but it's true. And I went in with the mindset of what needed to be done in District 3, what's really important to the people I represent. And I think when you're on a board, you need to look at that as well, and realize that you represent those businesses in the area too. You know, when you have a taxing district, as for the veterans thing, it's just Ward 10, you know, but there's also businesses in there that may be owned by people outside of that area. And the same thing that goes throughout the parish. Just kind of be mindful of it, and like Mr. Wendell said, we do have a fiduciary responsibility, just like Mr. Ryan said, to look out for be good stewards of money, and every penny does count, you know. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grove. Mr. Adams? Mr. Jones? Okay, the only final thing I want to say is I just want to personally thank, and from the Lafourche Parish Council, all of the different nonprofits, fire departments, Lions clubs, carnival clubs, private individuals, businesses that have donated their time, money, supplies to the parishes that are out west of us. I know there's been a huge outpouring from Lafourche Parish, and so I just want to say for myself that we really thank everyone for stepping up, because I know at some point in time we may need the same reciprocal action from others. So thanks to everyone that went out and has done their thing. With that said, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment, because there is no further business at Lafourche Parish Council regular meeting of September 8, 2020. So moved by Mr. Wendell, second by Mr. Lorraine. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes at 20:04 by a vote of 8 yeas and 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin.